Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Pirate. I will become stronger by checking in on the plot island. Chapter 21. Sha Chen, hurry up and do it. Usopp, who was huddled behind Sha Chen, said tremblingly. Ah, what are you talking about? How can we fight against so many people? We should just wait for death. Sha Chen also pretended to be scared and said. No, isn't it? Didn't Luffy and the others say you are strong? Hearing Sha Chen's words, Usopp panicked instantly and asked with trembling legs. But what he didn't notice was that Nami, who was also timid next to him, didn't show any fear at this time, but just a trace of helplessness. Looking at the pirates getting closer and closer, an idea came to Usopp's mind. Done. Gomo Gomo, pistol. An outstretched arm penetrated from behind Usopp and hit a pirate running at the front. The impact of the fist knocked the small group of pirates to the ground. Usopp's face suddenly showed joy, and he quickly turned his head to look behind him. At this time, Luffy and Zoro were looking at them panting. Who, Usopp, can you tell me clearly which side is north next time? Luffy shouted at the top of his lungs. I saw you ran out first, I thought you knew. Usopp said helplessly. You don't know why you were running so fast. Luffy's attitude at this time was okay, but Zoro next to him was really angry, staring at Nami. Nami, can you explain the good thing you just did? A layer of sweat broke out on Nami's forehead, and he waved his hand and said. It's better for two people to fall than for one person to fall, right? Don't you think it makes sense? Then why don't you? Okay, let's stop talking now, they are coming in front of us. Sha Chen interrupted Zoro before he finished speaking. Zoro didn't say anything after hearing this, but stood in front of everyone with Luffy. Slowly he pulled out the knife from his waist. In an instant, the two of them rushed out like arrows and fought with many pirates. As time went by, due to the gap in strength, each of these pirates were beaten to death by Luffy and Zoro. Django's face turned dark when he saw this scene, and he cursed a bunch of useless things in his heart. Then he picked up the iron ring in his hand, pointed it at Luffy who was fighting, and wanted to sneak attack him. At this moment, a voice from far away interrupted his movements. What are you doing? This is. A lot of sweat broke out on Zango's forehead. Captain Crow. At the same time, everyone's eyes were attracted by this voice. I saw a few meters behind Sha Chen, Clue was looking at the scene in front of him. Seeing Crow's appearance, Zango knew that he was very angry now, and hurriedly explained. Captain Crow, we are because. That's enough, needless to say. I thought they would come to stop our plan, but I never thought you would be such a waste. Can't even deal with a bunch of brats. Bang. As soon as Crow finished speaking, he flew backwards and hit the ground heavily in the distance. The glasses on his face were shattered to the ground. Everyone's eyes instantly turned to where Crow was standing, and they saw Sha Chen standing there at this time, saying lightly. I am very happy that you can become our captain's experience monster, but I don't like the tone of your words. So, I couldn't help but punch you. Are you okay? The group of pirates over there were all stunned at this time, with the same idea popping up in their minds. What did they just do? You actually want to find trouble with this ruthless man. At this moment, even though they were all injured, they still couldn't help but be glad that it was not Sha Chen who had taken action just now, but Luffy and Zoro. Usopp was also stunned at this time. You are so strong, so what do you mean by pretending to be so scared in front of me just now? Mullet Row. When his eyes returned to Sha Chen, he saw Crow lying on the ground and did not say anything. Instead, he turned his head and walked in the direction of Luffy. When he walked to Luffy, he said to him, I'll leave this bubbler to you. Sure enough, after Sha Chen finished speaking, Crow slowly got up from the ground. This is not to say that Sha Chen is not strong enough and cannot knock Crow down with one punch, but because he upholds the concept of being an excellent deputy captain. The experience monsters should be left to the companions to eat, otherwise it will be like what he said before. To deal with someone like Crow, you don't even need to use your hands, just release Conqueror's Haki. Okay, I'll leave those soldiers behind to you. After saying that, Luffy walked towards Crow. Understood, Captain. Sha Chen came to Zoro, stood side by side with him, and asked. Third-rate swordsman, I'll leave the Cat brothers to you, and I'll take care of the rest. Zoro glanced at Sha Chen with disdain and said mockingly, "You only know how to deal with a group of soldiers. But it's understandable. After all, you are a rookie." Sha Chen didn't say anything when he heard this, but looked at Zoro with a smile. Tisk, only the weak will gain their own satisfaction by ridiculing others. Obviously, he is a strong man, so he would not do such a thing. What, you said he also likes to taunt Zoro? That's different. As he said before, he is a strong man. It is normal for a strong man to mock the weak. This is no longer called finding a sense of presence, but is called motivating partners. After assigning his opponents, Sha Chen narrowed his eyes, and the next second, a powerful aura emanated from his body. In an instant, the pirates fell to the ground one by one like dumplings. For a moment, everyone on the field was stunned. What kind of power is this? Usopp asked with a horrified expression. Luffy and the other three also looked at this scene in surprise. They didn't know that Sha Chen had done this before. Zoro looked at this and suddenly thought of something, and asked Sha Chen. You also used this trick to knock out the housekeeper last time, right? You said it wasn't you, so you exposed your feet, Sha Chen. Luffy shouted from the side with stars in his eyes. See Gui, I also want to learn, Sha Chen. You will learn it later. Sha Chen smiled lightly. Really, can I learn it too? Luffy became even more excited after hearing this. This move is really cool, isn't it? Of course, Sha Chen said affirmatively. It's just that this time may be a little long. The last sentence was what Sha Chen said in his heart, otherwise it would be bad if it would damage Luffy's self-confidence. As of now, Luffy's strength and courage are not enough to support him in awakening conquerors. Not even qualified to practice any of the three colors of hockey. He is still too weak now. Crow, who had just gotten up on the other side, had the urge to lie back down again. That's right, this is it. This was how he fainted last time. At that time, he thought there was something wrong with his body. After waking up, I did a good inspection, although I didn't find anything in the end. But I still think that after this plan is successful, I will go to a doctor to check my body. Unexpectedly, all this was caused by the man in front of me. At this moment, Crow made an instant decision in his heart. Escape. The man in front of him was so strong that it frightened him and was definitely not something he could defeat. Just when Crow was still thinking about how to escape, a voice came from behind. Krabattle, I didn't expect you to be a pirate and to deal such a heavy blow to Mary. I really misjudged you. This sound is. A trace of joy flashed in Crow's eyes. It seemed that God was going to let him escape this disaster. The silent step was unleashed, and Crow immediately galloped towards Kaya behind him. His hope of escape lies in her hands. With the relationship between Kaya and Usopp, if he threatens Kaya, they will definitely take action. This gives him a chance to escape. Where are the people? Where have they gone? Everyone present looked confused when they saw Crow disappear. But Usopp shouted to Kaya, Kaya, run away. He knew something was wrong the moment he saw Kaya appear. Although he couldn't see Crow's whereabouts clearly, he always felt that Kaya was in danger. I really am. Sha Chen next to him was speechless. Really, in the end, he still had to do everything. It's really like being both a father and a mother. But it's understandable. After all, Crow's silent step is comparable to Shao in terms of speed. It's normal that Luffy and the others can't react at this stage. So, Sha Chen disappeared from the spot in an instant, and appeared in front of Kaya the next second, giving Crow a slap in the face. Even if it can match the speed of shaving, it has something to do with one's own strength. Weak people will definitely be slower to perform the same moves. Don't you see that the gap between an ordinary CP9 and Lucci is as big as heaven and earth? The strength gap between him and Crow is even greater than this, so even if Crow is closer to Kaya, he can act faster. But it's useless. Luffy, watch your opponent. Oh, okay. After hearing this, Luffy quickly ran to Crow. Then he started fighting with Crow. After some time, due to the gap in hard power, the battle between Zoro and the Cat brothers ended not long after. On the other hand, Luffy's fight was a bit difficult. Crow's silent steps made him miserable, but as the battle slowly progressed, he was gradually able to keep up with the rhythm. This is the scary thing about Luffy. He grows up too fast in battles. The more difficult the battle, the greater the improvement for Luffy. Just like when fighting Teacher Kai later, Luffy's strength will increase a lot with every blow. From the flowing cherry blossoms at the beginning to the tyrants in the middle, and finally to the fruit awakening. It's really a huge jump in strength. Although a large part of the reason for this is because of Teacher Kai's good teaching, it still has something to do with Luffy's talent. Seeing that he couldn't take down Luffy for a long time, Crow was also angry. Then Crow's hands dropped, and then his whole body swayed like a zombie walking. Spoon. As Crow's voice fell, his figure disappeared instantly. Then it launched an indiscriminate attack on the surrounding environment. Luffy's body, the surrounding rock walls, the ground, and the pirates lying on the ground all became the targets of his attack. Until, bang, there was a sound of a fist hitting the face, and Crow flew backwards with both hands. But the difference this time was that he never stood up again. Sha Chen really couldn't bear it this time. He had been worried about being an experience pack for Luffy before, so he didn't solve Crow's problem. But you kid is a bit unethical. They provoked him again and again, and this time they actually attacked him. If he endured it any longer, he would not be able to justify it. So Sha Chen decisively used some strength and punched him. Of course, the result was that he passed out without any accident, and without receiving the lunch box, Sha Chen acted lightly. At this point, the plan to attack the village initiated by Crow was officially solved. Zailuobu village once again spent a peaceful day like any other day. The next day, in the tavern of Zailuobu village. This black cat pirates are a bunch of poor people, and they don't even have a berry. Hey. Tui, it's really a shame among pirates. Nami said through gritted teeth while eating an orange. Sha Chen, who heard this next to him, just smiled faintly. If you can find it, there will be a ghost. Doesn't that mean I'm not professional? Luffy and Zoro next to them ignored Nami. One of them was busy eating meat and the other was busy drinking. Crunch. The door of the tavern was opened, and Kaya walked in. She smiled when she saw Sha Chen and others. You are here. Do you have time to come with me? I have a gift for you. Gift. Half an hour later. Wow. Luffy and Nami showed their starry eyes like idiots. It's a light sailing ship. Are you really going to give this ship to us? Luffy asked Kaya again excitedly. Yes, you must accept it. See Gui, what a great boat. Luffy couldn't help but keep praising him. Ah, help, save me. A panicked scream in the distance attracted everyone's attention. I saw Usopp holding a ball. Oh, no, there should be a Usopp stuck under the ball and rolling towards everyone from the slope. Is he performing acrobatics? Luffy asked doubtfully. No matter what he is doing, stop him first, otherwise he will hit the boat. Sha Chen said lightly. The new ship he just got cannot be damaged by Usopp. Then Sha Chen and Zoro each kicked Usopp in the face to help him stop. Thanks. Oh, no need. After that, Usopp talked with Kaya for a while. When they finished talking, Usopp turned his attention to Sha Chen and others on the ship. Hey, I won't hold back when we meet at sea in the future. Huh, what are you still talking about? Why don't you get on the boat quickly? Sha Chen asked. Luffy also said, aren't we already partners? Usopp was stunned when he heard this. Tears flowed out unconsciously. You. After a while, he wiped the tears from his eyes and shouted loudly. Captain, is it me? How is that possible? One day later. In a certain area of the East China Sea, on the Golden Melee. Hey, Luffy, what kind of bird are you drawing? Sha Chen's mouth twitched slightly as he looked at the pirate flag drawn by Luffy in front of him. Are you sure what you drew is really a skeleton? Usopp, you draw it, this silly captain is of no use. Wow, I knew you had to let me do the important things. Okay, just wrap it up on me. Usopp promised, patting his chest. After a while, everyone looked at the pirate flag drawn by Usopp and smiled with satisfaction. Oh, this painting is indeed much better than Luffy. Zoro said from the side. It's true, ha ha ha, call out. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew from the distant sea, causing everyone on the boat to look in a certain direction as if they were feeling something. I saw an island shrouded in cumulus clouds appearing in front of the sea. This. Nami's eyes flashed with shock, and then said. You can't be wrong, this is Treasure Island, a legendary island with many treasures. Treasure. Luffy excitedly climbed to the bow of the boat and stretched out his neck to watch from a distance. Then he said to Nami, "Then let's go there quickly, I can't wait to find the treasure." After a while, the Meli slowly approached the coast. After anchoring, everyone boarded the island. At the same time, a familiar and pleasant voice sounded in Sha Chen's mind. Ding! Check-in to Treasure Island was successful, and the indestructible body of Vajra was upgraded to the intermediate level. The moment the system prompt tone fell, Sha Chen felt an extremely powerful force emerging from the depths of his body. It even made his body unsteady and staggered a bit. Seeing this situation, Zoro couldn't help but ask, "Hey, Sha Chen, what's wrong with you? Isn't it because you were hungover from drinking last night? Are you such a noob? Oh, when it comes to drinking, even 10 of you can't catch up with me," Sha Chen said disdainfully. But now he really had to sit down and get used to the energy that was constantly emerging from his body, so he said to everyone, "I'll guard the ship, you go ahead." After saying that, he appeared directly on the boat and walked into the cabin without looking back. What the hell is this guy doing? Zoro still looked suspicious. Luffy said, "Well, since Sha Chen doesn't want to go, let's go by ourselves. Treasure, treasure, here I come." The figures of everyone gradually disappeared on the island, and Sha Chen on the boat finally adapted to the soaring power in his body. After feeling it carefully, Sha Chen found that his current physique was at least 3 times what it was before the breakthrough. Although it may not seem like a big increase, you must know that Sha Chen's original physique was already very strong. Moreover, 3 times the original physique is not a simple situation where 1 + 1 + 1 = 3. Now, even if he faces the previous 10 at the same time, he can do it with ease. The strength has been greatly improved. But to be honest, this indestructible body is really awesome. According to Sha Chen's current estimation, his physical strength at this time is almost the same as Luffy during the Onigashima period, and may even be a little stronger. If the increase in the subsequent high-level Vajra's indestructible body is as large as that, it will even be stronger than Big Mom's steel balloon body. This wave can only be said to have greatly improved its strength. This gave him more confidence to face the next battle. It's been a while since he came to the One Piece world, but he hasn't tried out how strong his full power is. Now his estimates of his strength are all based on his understanding of the original work. Whether this is specifically the case remains to be verified. Thinking of this, a smile appeared on Sha Chen's lips. Looking forward to it. After Sha Chen spent a day bored on the boat, he finally heard the sound of Luffy and the others coming back. Slowly walked out of the deck. And Luffy yelled after seeing Sha Chen, "Hey, Sha Chen, it's really a shame that you didn't come today. We saw a lot of interesting things, such as an uncle growing in a box." Sha Chen listened quietly, interjecting a few words from time to time and marveling. Bursts of laughter came from the melee. The next day, Sha Chen was still sleeping in the cabin when he heard shouting from outside. He walked out with his sleepy eyes open. As soon as they walked out, they saw Luffy and Usopp bowing at a 90-degree angle to someone. "Johnny," Sha Chen said doubtfully. He still had some impression of these 2 little followers of Zoro. But what is happening now? After Sha Chen walked down, he asked Zoro about it and learned the cause and effect of the incident. A simple summary is that Johnny thought Luffy and Usopp had killed Joseph. That's why this happens. Sha Chen walked to Joseph calmly, and at this time he also remembered the plot. He said to the people next to him, "Hey, if you have anything to do, we'll talk about it later. Now go to the cabin and take out Nami's fresh oranges, otherwise this person will really die." You mean Joseph is not dead? After hearing this, Johnny asked Sha Chen excitedly. "Yes, not yet, but maybe it will happen later. So, hurry up and get there." Sha Chen yelled directly at Luffy and Usopp in the last sentence. These 2 dickheads don't know how to see things and do things right. "Yes, we'll go right away." They straightened their bodies instantly and ran towards the cabin. Sha Chen turned to look at Joseph and said lightly, "He is suffering from scurvy. To put it simply, it is due to the long-term life at sea without a reasonable diet. Leading to nutritional imbalance, you will eventually suffer from this disease." After a while, when Luffy and the 2 fed Joseph fresh oranges, his complexion began to slowly improve. Johnny's eyes instantly lit up when he saw this scene, and he rushed over and hugged Sha Chen's thigh. Brother, the kindness of rebuilding is unforgettable. Get out of my way. So, nutritional balance at sea is very important, you know. Otherwise, various problems may occur. Sha Chen sat on the boat and shared basic common sense with a bunch of idiots like Luffy. Okay, if that's the case, let's find a chef. Luffy suddenly stood up and said loudly. Indeed, it makes sense. This time, it was rare that no one came out to oppose Luffy. After all, what he said did make sense. Johnny, who heard this, said, if you want to find a sea chef, I have a place I recommend you to go to. Really? Where? Johnny narrowed his eyes and said word by word. Sea Restaurant Barati. Everyone, I saw the restaurant on the sea. Luffy, who was sitting on the bow of the boat, suddenly turned his head and said to everyone on the boat. Everyone stood up in unison and looked at the looming ship ahead. Sha Chen was also a little excited at this moment. He was actually a man who liked to enjoy delicious food. Now that he finally came to the famous sea restaurant, he was looking forward to it. Just when everyone's eyes were focused on the front, the sound of a ship breaking through the waves came from next to their ship. Looking back, I saw that a marine warship was heading forward side by side with the Mary. Then, a very naughty-looking man appeared in everyone's sight. This person, Sha Chen knew very well that he was one of the few he remembered well. After all, this is a man with the same Iron Fist title as Garp. Iron Fist Hobody. This is the strength, maybe a little. Garp, you are also called Iron Fist. What level do you belong to, and you have the same title as me? Returning to the topic, Hobody looked at the pirate ship opposite and felt very unhappy. When did a group of pirates see him, a lieutenant from the Marine headquarters, and start running away? Do you think you don't take him seriously? If this is the case, then he has to give them some color to show them. He summoned a Marine with one hand and said to him, sink it. Sha Chen narrowed his eyes when he heard this on the melee. Boy, you are quite ugly and very courageous. How dare you say something like, sinking the Mary, in front of him? Do you think he can't hold the stick anymore? Although he really had no intention of wielding a stick. The next second, before the Marine on the opposite side could make any movement, Conqueror's domineering energy came out from his body, stunning every Marine on the ship. Done. Not to mention, the more Sha Chen uses Conqueror's haki, the more comfortable he becomes. The efficiency of clearing out minions is really amazing. At this time, Luffy was envious again when he saw this scene again, with little stars in his eyes. Sha Chen, teach me this quickly. Didn't you say I could master it last time? I'm talking about the future, not now. Sha Chen curled his lips lightly. What kind of strength is there? Don't you have any idea? Cheapskate. Sha Chen, why do I always have the urge to hit people lately? A few minutes later, the melee finally came to Barati's side. At this time, everyone was so excited that they could not help but shed their tears on the ground. Due to Sha Chen's intervention, Marine did not fire the cannonball, so Luffy did not damage Barati's ceiling. So now everyone comes to the restaurant together and waits to enjoy the food. Good food, good food. Luffy and Usopp both held a fork in their left and right hands and tapped the table rhythmically. After a while, a lot of exquisite delicacies were served to everyone's tables. Suddenly, a gust of wind swept through the clouds, and the food on the table decreased at a speed visible to the naked eye. Sha Chen was also eating big mouthfuls at this time. The food made by Barati is different from other places, much more delicious. And since Nami pays for the meals now, it makes him eat even more deliciously. I don't know why, but even the food tastes better when you don't have to pay for it yourself. Dong dong dong. With the sound of shoes hitting the floor, a man wearing a black double-breasted suit, tie, yellow hair, and curly eyebrows walked towards them. Then he came to Nami gracefully, gently held her hand, and asked gently. This beautiful lady, may I have the honor to buy you a glass of red wine? Nami was confused by this sudden scene, but with the idea of not taking advantage of she said happily. Okay, thank you, you are such a gentleman. Thank you for your compliment, I think so too. Sha Chen and Luffy looked at Sanji speechlessly. Is this person so shameless? Seeing this scene, Nami took it a step further and said coquettishly to Sanji. The food here is quite expensive. Can you treat me to a meal? Seeing Nami like this, Sanji's eyes instantly turned into heart shapes. He said with a flattering face. Of course, miss. However, this expression did not last for a second before he turned to Sha Chen and others and said. You can't. Do you dare to double standard a little more? Sha Chen is still concentrating on cooking. What does this have to do with him? Even though she doesn't have to pay for Nami's meal herself, Nami still has to pay for his meal. So, no matter what, it won't affect him. This is. No way, is this. Suddenly, other guests in the restaurant burst into disbelief and looked out the window with fear. Suddenly, the eyes of everyone on the field were attracted. Except for Luffy and Sha Chen, they were still cooking at this time. But even if Sha Chen didn't look at anything, he knew what was happening outside. Seeing, hearing, and being domineering is not just for free. With a creaking sound, the door of the restaurant was pushed open from the outside. Two men walked in, supporting each other. Both of them were very weak at this time, and fell to the ground within a few steps. He begged everyone in a thin voice, "Give me something to eat, we are going to starve to death." Impossible, don't you know what your Krieg pirates are like? A rich chef jumped out and said. The comments about you in the sea are all about despicable people. Get out of here quickly. You are not welcome in Baratie. After the words fell, Krieg and Agent fell to the ground without any reaction. At this time, they were already at the end of their strength. I was so hungry that I had no energy at all, but I still kept begging. Give me something to eat. Patty, the rugged-looking cook, was still yelling at Krieg and the two to get out. If other cooks hadn't stopped him, Sha Chen had no doubt that he would throw them out himself. At this time, Sanji was watching this scene silently, speechless for a long time. After a while, Sanji turned around and walked towards the kitchen, and then a clanging sound came from the kitchen. 10 minutes later, Sanji brought a large bowl of fried rice and placed it in front of Krieg. He lit a cigarette and took a deep breath before saying slowly. Come on, eat. Krieg and Ajin looked up at the same time. Krieg picked up the rice in front of him and started eating without saying anything. Jin hesitated for a long time and then said thank you before starting to speak. The two of them just sat on the ground and ate without any image. When Krieg had finished eating, he slowly stood up and looked at Sanji in front of him with scrutiny in his eyes. Then he slowly spoke. Now, go and prepare meals for 100 people. My companions are about to starve to death. Sanji did not act when he heard this, but looked straight at Krieg. For a long time, when the atmosphere between the two could not go on, Sanji slowly answered with one word. Good. Then he turned around and walked into the kitchen. When Patty saw this scene, he was furious and yelled at Sanji. What are you doing? We don't have a tradition here of giving others freebies. Sanji didn't look back, but a faint voice came over. We are chefs, you guy. Patty was still very angry. No, he was going to teach these pirates a lesson and let them know that Baratie was not someone to be trifled with. Just when he was about to find trouble with Krieg, a voice stopped him. Do as he says. A middle-aged man with a broken leg, wearing a chef's hat and a trademark beard on his face came over and said. Chef, but, do as I say. Before Patty finished speaking, Jep interrupted him. Therefore, he could only reluctantly go to the kitchen and get busy. Across the way, Krieg looked at Zapu and he looked more and more familiar. Suddenly he seemed to have thought of something and said in disbelief. Are you red-footed Zep? Zapu did not answer his words, but looked at him quietly as always. The expression on Krieg's face kept changing at this time, from surprise to fear, and finally calmness, and then he slowly said. So what if you are red-footed Zapu? All your strength lies in your legs. How much strength do you still have without these legs? I am now officially informing you that I own your boat. I am only here to ask for the boat and food, so don't do anything unnecessary, otherwise you will be responsible for the consequences. After saying that, Krieg walked out directly. Sha Chen looked at this scene calmly at this time, with a completely scornful attitude towards Krieg's remarks. Without them, Krieg's plan would not succeed. He still wants to eat Baratie's delicacies. What if Krieg destroys it? After a period of time, since Luffy always wanted to invite Sanji to join, they naturally stayed here. Sha Chen was sleeping soundly in the cabin at this time. He knew that Sanji would not agree to get on the ship without going through something. So there is no need to rush, just wait slowly. Until. Boom. A loud sound came from outside, and Sha Chen slowly opened his eyes. Slowly sitting up and looking in a certain direction, he felt the breath even if there was an object blocking it, and a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Are you coming? At this time, the outside world. Just as the Krieg pirates wanted to get off the ship to grab Barati, the ship began to break apart in the middle. The cut surface is as smooth as a mirror. At the same time, a small boat slowly approaches from a distance. A person suddenly appeared and attracted everyone's attention, especially Zoro. Beads of sweat broke out on his forehead. He's Hawkeye. Ah, who is that? Luffy asked in confusion. Zoro's slightly excited voice came. He is my goal when I go to sea, the person I want to defeat, the strongest swordsman in the world. See Gui, is he the strongest swordsman in the world? Luffy and others also looked at Hawkeye over there. At this time, Zoro couldn't help it and jumped directly onto the wreckage of a ship. Shout to Hawkeye. Hey, Hawkeye, I want to challenge you. Hawkeye, who heard the voice, slightly raised the brim of his hat, looked at Zoro and said. Your strength is too weak, you don't have the qualifications. TCH, could it be that the world's best swordsman is someone who can only talk with his mouth? Come over and challenge me if you can. Zoro said provocatively. I don't know if you are overconfident or ignorant, but since you want to die, I will give you this chance. As soon as he finished speaking, Eagle Eye jumped over from the boat. Looking at Zoro, he said coldly again. If you are a first-class swordsman, you should be able to feel the gap between us. But obviously, you're not, so. Hawkeye slowly took off the cross pendant from his neck, pulled out a knife, and said calmly. I'm sorry, I really don't have a smaller knife than this. You guys are so insulting. Zoro roared angrily, and then rushed towards Hawkeye with a ghost slash. Then, his expression turned into one of deep astonishment. How is this possible? I saw that Zoro's 3 knives at this time were all blocked by Hawkeye's knife, and they were completely unable to move forward. What? My brother's ghost slash was actually blocked. It's obviously a big move that hits 100% of the time. Johnny and Joseph said in horror from the side. Isn't this normal? Who do you think the man opposite is? He is the best swordsman in the world. Sha Chen, who came to them at some unknown time, looked at the eagle eyes over there and said lightly. Brother Sha Chen, look carefully, this is Zoro's battle. Looking back to Zoro, he now feels that his worldview has been greatly impacted. Is the gap in strength so big? Is the world so far apart? Then Zoro began to attack continuously, but no matter how he attacked, he was easily blocked by Hawkeye with the knife. As time passed, Zoro's heart gradually sank to the bottom. How could I be played with by something like this toy? Zoro took a step back and struck a pose. Tiger. PFF'd. The sound of a sharp blade cutting through the wound came, and at some point Hawkeye had arrived in front of Zoro, and the knife had pierced his chest. A surprised expression appeared on Hawkeye's face. Why don't you retreat? Aren't you afraid of having your heart pierced? Because I have a reason why I can't retreat. Even if I die, I can never lose. Hearing this, Eagle Eye's pupils dilated slightly, flashing a look of shock. At this moment, he re-examined the man in front of him. The belief exuding from him at this moment was so dazzling. Hawkeye took a few steps back slightly, took back the knife in his hand, and then pulled out one of the 12 supreme sharp knives behind him, Black Knife Knight. Long lost strong man, in order to show my respect for you, let me bury you with this black knife. A smile appeared on Zoro's lips when he heard this. Just what I wanted. Then the 2 knives kept spinning in his hands. 3,000 worlds. The figures of the 2 people passed each other and kept standing still. A second later, Zoro suddenly fell to his knees, and the 2 knives broke directly. He lowered his head and murmured to himself, is this the best swordsman in the world? Zoro stood up, turned his head, and opened his hands. What do you mean? Hawkeye was startled. The scars on the back are a swordsman's disgrace. Interesting, boy. A smile appeared on the corner of Hawkeye's mouth, and then he struck Zoro with the black knife in his hand. A huge wound tore open from Zoro's chest. The force of the counter shock knocked Zoro directly into the sea. Zoro, Luffy shouted, and then wanted to run to fight with Hawkeye. But he was pulled down by Sha Chen. Calm down, Zoro is not dead yet. Huh. When Luffy heard this, his expression suddenly became surprised. He thought Zoro was dead just now. Sha Chen looked at Eagle Eye calmly, the fighting spirit in his eyes slowly rising. Zoro's battle is over, and it's his turn next. He has been waiting for this battle for a long time. He has always wanted to test his own strength but has always suffered from the lack of an opponent. The Hawkeye in front of me is completely powerful enough to try it out. At this time, Hawkeye, who slowly inserted the black knife back behind him, seemed to sense something, and turned his head to meet Sha Chen's gaze. Sha Chen smiled slightly, and in the next second, he appeared opposite Hawkeye in a flash. This scene scared the pirates around. How did this person get here? The eagle's eyes were fixed on Sha Chen opposite him. His sharp gaze was enough to make anyone who looked at him fearful, but Sha Chen was not among them. Mihawk, I want to fight you. Sha Chen spoke concisely and directly. Eagle Eye frowned, and then said calmly, I'm not interested. I had a lot of fun just now, but now I don't want to play anymore. And, you're not a swordsman, are you? If I'm not a swordsman, I can't fight with you. Sha Chen asked back. That's not true, it's just that I'm really not interested. After saying that, Hawkeye turned around and left without any intention of fighting Sha Chen. Sha Chen became anxious when he saw this scene. How could he prove his strength if Hawkeye left now? It will not be easy to find such a strong opponent next time. Suddenly, a good idea appeared in Sha Chen's mind. Mihawk, wait, Shanks is my uncle, how about you fight me for his sake? Huh. After hearing this, Eagle Eye turned his head and stared at Sha Chen and asked uncertainly. You said Shanks is your uncle. Is there any evidence? Are you familiar with the straw hat on the head of the boy wearing the straw hat over there? That's what Shanks gave him. I used to live in Windmill Village, Shanks stayed there for a while, and that's when I met him. And he also told me about his relationship with you. Otherwise, how would I know about your relationship with him? Sha Chen opened his mouth and came with a firm look on his face, as if what he said was true. However, what Sha Chen said was indeed quite credible, at least Eagle Eye believed it at this time. As for when he seeks confirmation from Hongfa and finds out that there is no such thing, it will be a matter of the future. That has nothing to do with Sha Chen. As expected, after listening to Sha Chen's words, Hawkeye stood there and thought about it, then nodded and said. Since you are Shanks' nephew, I agree to your request and I can fight with you. After saying that, he pulled out the black knife he had behind him instead of using the pocket knife to deal with it. Because he felt a dangerous aura from Sha Chen's body, which deserved to be taken seriously. Seeing Hawkeye in a fighting posture, Sha Chen showed a smile. Then the iron rod found on Crow's boat appeared in his hand. As for everyone else around him, they were stunned at this moment, including Luffy and others and Zoro who had just been rescued. Especially Luffy, a big question mark appeared above his head at this time. You didn't let me take action just now, were you planning to do it yourself? Sha Chen, you are such a fool. At this time, everyone else was completely unfavorable to Sha Chen for this battle. They all watched the battle between Hawkeye and Zoro just now. The bounty hunter Zoro was beaten in the hands of Hawkeye and was unable to fight back. His companion should be in a similar situation. Not to mention Zoro, who had just regained consciousness. He had truly felt the difference in the world just now. That's not a power he can match now. Although Sha Chen was very strong in his opinion, he had never shown his true strength in front of him. But he still didn't think Sha Chen could fight Hawkeye, and the situation in the battle might be a little better than him. At least that's what he still thinks now, until Sha Chen held the iron rod with one hand and appeared above Eagle Eye the next second. The iron rod in his hand hit Eagle Eye hard. Hawkeye was also not to be outdone. Hideoe made a backhand chop and collided with the iron rod. In an instant, an extremely powerful shock wave came out from the center of the fight between the two. The surrounding waves were directly lifted to a height of tens of meters, and even formed a small tsunami. Ah! Everyone around them screamed in terror. Is this really something a human can do? After the waves subsided, everyone discovered that they were already more than 1,000 meters away from Sha Chen. And because the shock waves are still being released, this distance even tends to get further away. At this time, the two people in the center of the battlefield looked at each other with different expressions. Hawkeye was very surprised at this time. This young man was so powerful that even he felt that the knife in his hand was unstable at that moment. And, the eagle's eyes slowly caught sight of the black luster shining on the iron rod. Armed and domineering, it was really strange that he would see this thing in the East China Sea. You must know that even in the first half of the Great Channel, there were only a few people who mastered this skill. Only in places like New World will this become a commonly used skill. Therefore, he was still very curious about Sha Chen's ability to master this power now. Sha Chen felt the huge power coming from his hands at this moment, and there was a hint of excitement in his eyes. As expected of Hawkeye, he took his full blow so easily. You must know that with his current physique, the power of a full-strength stick is extremely powerful. The person who can compete with 4 emperors is not easy. In this case, he can play with all his strength. Sha Chen narrowed his eyes, and then continued to attack Eagle Eye. The 6 secret movements seemed to come to life in his hands, and with the cooperation of various techniques, he even faintly suppressed Hawkeye. On the other hand, Hawkeye was a little confused at this time. After sailing at sea for many years, he could certainly tell that Sha Chen was now using the Marine 6th style. And it is still used to a very superb level. Only, isn't it inappropriate for a pirate like you to be so familiar with Marine stuff? Could it be that this person is Marine spy? With this idea in mind, Hawkeye also raised his question. Oh, you're talking about this. Sha Chen started his unnecessary compilation again. Again, do you see that straw hat boy over there? His grandfather is Garp, so I learned all 6 styles from Garp. Marine hero, Garp's grandson. Hawkeye was stunned when he heard this. He didn't expect that this straw hat boy had such an identity. But when he turned around, he thought of a question. Why is my grandpa a Marine but my grandson wants to be a pirate? Who knows? Sha Chen shrugged. Then he launched a series of attacks towards Hawkeye. Every time the two people collide, a huge shock wave will be generated, and the waves will continue to surge one after another. Suddenly, Sha Chen narrowed his eyes, came to the front of Eagle Eye with his shaver, and threw the stick in his hand high. Aim at Hawkeye with both hands in the shape of fists. 6 King's Spear. An extremely powerful impact burst out from Sha Chen's fist, speeding towards Eagle Eye. Hawkeye directly held the knife in front of him, blocking this powerful and heavy blow. However, his feet moved back more than 10 meters under the force. There was a hint of excitement in Sha Chen's eyes. Opponents of this strength are not common. Then Hawkeye raised the knife in front of him and struck down hard. A huge green sword light attacked Sha Chen. I lost it. Seeing this scene, Sha Chen was so frightened that his cerebellum shrank, and he quickly stepped aside. The sword light rushed straight into the sea. There was no movement at all. The next second, the sea level began to split from the middle, and a hollow area stretching for thousands of meters and hundreds of meters deep appeared on the sea surface. The water did not even flow back for more than 10 seconds, and it did not surge until dozens of seconds later. This produced several small whirlpools and another powerful wave, pushing Bharati further. See Gui, Sha Chen is so awesome, Luffy said with stars in his eyes. At the same time, there were not a few people who had the same reaction as Luffy. Everyone looked at the fight between the two men with their mouths open. This, how could there be such a monster in the world? Even Zoro, who was more familiar with Sha Chen, had his eyes widened at this time. The power Hawkeye uses to fight now is much stronger than when he fought him. And Sha Chen was actually able to fight back and forth with the opponent in this situation. Did he hide it so deeply all along? Poor Zoro thought that Sha Chen was just a lot stronger than him, but now it seems the world is really so far away. Nami was also watching this scene blankly at this time, feeling unable to calm down for a long time. She also didn't expect that Sha Chen, who stayed with her every day, would have such strength. This kind of power, even. Suddenly, Nami seemed to have thought of something, and her face suddenly darkened. After a long time, she gritted her teeth and made a decision. She has to solve her own problems by herself. Then she sneaked around to the melee while no one was paying attention to her. At the same time, Krieg and others were also filled with horror. After feeling the power like a god, there was a trace of fear in his heart. He just seemed to want to go over and kill Hawkeye. Hiss, what kind of lifeless idea is he having? In an instant, he just wanted to escape from this place quickly, otherwise he would be dead later. Thinking like this, he looked at Barati not far away. He needs this ship, so Krieg waved his hand and said to the many pirate boys behind him. Boys, while the two monsters over there are still fighting, let's take over this ship quickly. Come on. Sha Chen looked at the surging sea water below in the air and was frightened for a while. Fortunately, he dodged quickly, otherwise he would have suffered a lot if he had received this blow. Just when he was still shocked by the power of Hawkeye's attack, Hawkeye's voice came from below. Boy, don't be in a daze. Sha Chen turned his head and saw another huge sword light speeding towards him. But the distance at this time gave him no time to dodge. In this case, Sha Chen narrowed his eyes. Hold the stick in your hand tightly with both hands. He roared angrily. Thunder. 8 trigrams. The stick in his hand was suddenly swung out by Sha Chen and collided with the sword light. Drink. After a few seconds of stalemate, with Sha Chen's loud roar, the sword light was directly shot into the sky by Sha Chen. As for why Sha Chen uses the name of Teacher Kai's move, all I can say is, no way. He is a bad namer, and there is no way his name could be as powerful as Teacher Kai's moves. Moreover, the mace and the iron rod are both sticks, and he can use Teacher Kai's moves with the iron rod. So, Teacher Kai must never say that he pirated his moves in the future. Without hesitation, Sha Chen rushed towards Eagle Eye again, and the two fought again. After some time, after another confrontation, the two of them looked at each other, and Hawkeye's state also fluctuated slightly, panting slightly. On the other hand, Sha Chen on the opposite side looked a bit miserable at this time, with countless knife marks on his body and tattered clothes. Blood continued to seep out of his body, turning him into a bloody man. My physical strength has also bottomed out, and I am gasping for air. Eagle Eye looked at Sha Chen and said, you are already bruised, and you don't have much energy left. Do you want to continue fighting? Broken all over. Sha Chen chuckled. Are you sure? As soon as he finished speaking, Sha Chen's wounds began to heal at a speed visible to the naked eye. After a while, the small wounds on Sha Chen's body had disappeared, and the larger wounds only had some white marks left. Animal-type fruits have relatively strong recovery capabilities, let alone mythical animal-type fruits like his. To put it bluntly, as long as the damage was not particularly serious, he might be able to recover with just a few hits. And when his fruit ability is further strengthened in the future, his recovery ability will also become stronger. It is even impossible to regenerate a severed limb. He is the Monkey King. But now there is a real problem. He does not have much physical strength anymore. This thing will not recover with the passage of time, it will only become less and less. Eagle Eye also looked surprised when he saw this scene. Is this your devil fruit ability? That's right. Sha Chen nodded. Then he continued. I have one last trick, and I want you to give me some advice. As soon as he finished speaking, Sha Chen used moonwalk to fly into the sky. The stick in his hand was raised high, and the armed domineering energy wrapped around it, and at the same time, all the strength of his body was poured into it. Meteor. As Sha Chen spoke, he quickly rushed towards Eagle Eye. He kept using moonwalk to accelerate in the air, and by the time he got close to Hawkeye, his speed had reached an unimaginable level. Uncle Kizaru once said, speed is quality. When he reached Hawkeye, he hit him hard with the stick in his hand. Boom! A shock wave several times more powerful than before spread out again, and everyone could clearly feel the shock wave even if they were several kilometers away. As expected, another wave hit them. And the waves this time were hundreds of meters high. Luffy, Krieg and others who were fighting looked at this situation with their eyes widened. Then he stopped fighting instantly and ran up to Barati desperately. Now the only ship in the sea can give them a sense of security. As the voices gradually calmed down, the battle between Sha Chen and Eagle Eye had already decided the winner. Sha Chen slumped down on a floating wooden board, sweat dripping from his forehead. Looking at the opposite side, Hawkeye was still panting slightly and said, I lost. Sha Chen actually knew about his failure before the battle started. Although he is strong, it is impossible to say that he can defeat a man of Hawkeye's level. So he didn't feel any loss about it, and he could also feel that Hawkeye was letting off steam. Otherwise, the world's best swordsman has more than just this strength. After this battle, he roughly understood his current level. It's probably similar to Luffy's strength when he used gear for Elastomon 2 years later. He is already very satisfied with this result. After all, how long has it been since he came to the world of One Piece? It has reached a height that most people cannot reach in their lifetime. If this is not enough, it would be a bit greedy. And his strength will not stay at this stage for long. When he checks in a few more islands, then Gia. The 3-day separation was really the best way to describe it for him. Hawkeye slowly put away his sword and stood up. Looking at Sha Chen, who was slumped on the ground, there was no wave in his eyes, but his heart was very uneasy. This young man is quite capable. The last blow just now made him feel threatened, so he used most of his strength to block it. Originally, he thought that this battle with Sha Chen was just a boring game for giving advice to children. Unexpectedly, he felt a little excited after a long absence. Today's young people are really fiercer than the last. Boy, what is your dream? Eagle Eye suddenly asked Sha Chen. My dream. Sha Chen hesitated for a while, then showed a smile and said, I want to live freely in this free sea and do whatever I want without any restrictions. I see, this is not a simple matter. Eagle Eye said calmly. Even with his current strength, he will still be subject to some restrictions, such as world government. And what he saw in Sha Chen's eyes was the kind of free will that was completely unrestrained. And this must mean confronting the world government. In this case, he. Suddenly, Hawkeye reacted and a slight smile appeared on his lips. Why does he care so much? Young man, just let him follow his own ideas. What he can't do, maybe Sha Chen can do it. Hawkeye slowly turned around, stepped on a wooden board, and finally turned to look at Sha Chen. Young people, don't give up on your dreams, keep at it. I will. Sha Chen revealed a big white fang and said. After receiving the answer, Hawkeye drew out his black knife again, and then slashed forward. Then the plank under his feet began to rush towards his small boat, which was washed away unknown distance. Looking at the black spots gradually disappearing in the distance, Sha Chen also smiled. What a joyful battle. 10 minutes later, Sha Chen slowly stood up after regaining his strength. He looked around. When he noticed that Bharati had almost turned into a small black dot in the distance, he suddenly slapped his head and then quickly flew into the sky. Keep using moonwalk to get there. He forgot about it. Fortunately, we can still see the shadow of the boat, otherwise we would be doomed if we couldn't find the boat. He can't tell the direction. Some time later, when Sha Chen came to Bharati, he discovered that the place had also been damaged to some extent. The 2 raised fin boards were now broken into pieces. Look at Luffy sleeping soundly on the ground and Krieg lying on the ground over there. Sha Chen immediately understood what was happening here. At the same time, under Sha Chen's knowledge and perception, except for the other people on the spaceship, they were no longer there. I understand in my heart, it seems that Nami has made the same decision. She just had to tell them and let them go back with her. Can't someone like Eren be easily crushed to death? It's such a fool to have to bear it all alone. But the matter has come to this, and there is no point in thinking about it anymore. Let's deal with the current matters first. Sha Chen slowly fell to the ground, and the pirates and others around him immediately took a few steps away from him. This can't help but put a dark line on his face. Does he look so scary? But the people around me didn't think so. Due to their limited knowledge, they just saw such a powerful battle all at once. It directly shattered their worldview. In their opinion, Sha Chen is now the strongest person in the world, with the power to destroy the world. It's strange that they are not afraid. In this case, the next thing is much simpler. Under Sha Chen's powerful force, these pirates ran as fast as they could, grabbing nearby wooden boards and drifting away. But it can be considered that they have some conscience and have not forgotten Krieg. By the way, he also took him with him. This battle also came to an end. Sha Chen turned to look at the chefs and asked, "Is it still open now? I'm a little hungry." Open. Half a day later. ... So, I guess Sister Nami's destination is Eren Paradise. Joseph said with certainty. Okay, now that we know Nami's destination, let's go get him back. Luffy shouted from the side. Then, let's set off without further delay. Sha Chen also said calmly from the side. Maybe something will happen if we wait too late. Yoshi, let's go. As soon as Sha Chen and others walked out of the cabin, they saw Sanji already waiting outside. He held a cigarette in his mouth and said pretentiously, "Just let me accompany you to have a try." After hearing this, Luffy's expression was dull at first, and then suddenly ecstatic. Really? Really? Do you really want to be our partner? Ah, it's true. Ah ha ha ha, that's really great. Then Sanji, Luffy and the others came to the boat, and there was a sound from behind just before they were about to board the boat. Don't catch a cold. Instantly, Sanji's eyes filled with tears, and the tears kept flowing down. He turned to face Zapu, who was on the second floor, and knelt down directly. I will never forget your great kindness in my life. Zapu also had tears in his eyes after hearing this. Go chase your dreams. After some time, on the sea heading to Kokoja village, a small boat was sailing. The 4 people on the boat were enjoying the meal leisurely. Sha Chen took a mouthful of meat and drank another sip of red wine. He couldn't help but sigh. This is life. What a hard life it was before there was no chef. Although due to the existence of system space, he can directly bring a lot of meat. But those who get tired of it after eating it for a long time, how could there be a customized service like Sanji's now? Hey, compared to cooking for you, I would rather cook for Miss Nami. I'm so happy to think that I can see Miss Nami later. Sanji couldn't stop thinking next to him. At this moment, they suddenly felt the ship begin to vibrate. Hey, what's going on? Luffy asked doubtfully. The next second, a huge creature broke out of the sea and stared at the people on the boat. Why does this kind of behemoth appear in the East China Sea? Isn't this something that only exists in the Great Waterway? Joseph said in horror, holding his head. Oh, it's really big, this manatee. Sha Chen raised his eyebrows and said. Idiot, how can a cow be in the sea? This is a hippopotamus, Sanji retorted from the side. Does your hippopotamus have horns? Well, if you say so. Stop talking, brother, it's going to attack us. Joseph yelled, looking at the manatee in front of him. Okay, I was worried that the boat was too slow, but now I have a solution. Sha Chen waved his hand, and then charged towards the manatee with Conqueror's domineering force. In an instant, the manatee froze on the spot, looking at Sha Chen, who was sitting leisurely on the stool with a very horrified expression. I didn't dare to take any action at all. Then the next thing will be easier. Brave Niu, not afraid of difficulties, go for it. Sha Chen and Luffy stood on the bow of the boat and shouted. In front of them was the manatee tied up with a rope. Oh ho ho, so fast. Just rushed to Aaron's paradise. Not long after, they saw an island in the distance. Unsurprisingly, it was the island where Kokoja village was located, and where Aaron's paradise was located. But things will never be so smooth sailing. Hey, silly bird, manatee, stop. Seeing the manatee about to hit the wall, Sanji shouted with an ugly face. But Sha Chen and Luffy next to them seemed to have no idea, and still shouted. Come on, rush. But no matter how much Sanji shouted, the manatee still hit him. Then, why does it feel like we are flying in the sky? Luffy tilted his head in confusion. Please remove the image. Ding, I checked into Kokoja village successfully, my fruit ability was upgraded to intermediate level, and I got the piercing eyes. For a moment, Sha Chen felt a stinging pain in his eyes, which made him cover his eyes unconsciously and sit on the stool. Sha Chen, what's wrong with you? Luffy couldn't help but ask when he saw Sha Chen's strange behavior. It's okay, my eyes just hurt a little. After a while, when the boat slowly stopped on land, the stinging sensation in Sha Chen's eyes gradually dissipated. What are you fools doing? Zoro's angry voice came. Oh, Zoro, what are you doing here? Several people nearby were chattering, but Sha Chen was feeling the changes in his eyes. When Sha Chen slowly opened his eyes, if anyone saw him at this time, they would find that the pupils of his eyes had turned golden. Shining with brilliance, the whole person looks more handsome. Of course, the biggest change is definitely not the change in appearance. Sha Chen cast his eyes on Luffy and others aside. He found that his eyes gradually penetrated their clothes, and then he saw Shao Kunken. Oh, No, it's their qi and blood flowing. In Sha Chen's eyes, they look like human beings composed of qi and blood. By observing the flow of qi and blood, Sha Chen can keenly discover where they are injured and which part of their body is more powerful to attack. To put it simply, it is equivalent to a vulnerability detector. And not only that, his eyes can even emit powerful energy rays like Superman in Marvel. Extremely powerful. Sha Chen really loves this ability. He's so handsome, isn't he? Just when Sha Chen thought this check-in was over, a voice came again in his mind. Ding. Check into Kokoja village successfully and get. Ding. 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 There is a bug in the system and it is being repaired. It cannot be repaired. The demonized form of the Monkey King's fruit has been released. Note, please note that the demonized form is extremely unstable. Host needs to. Sha Chen was immediately confused by this series of prompts, but when he heard that the bug could not be repaired and he received another reward, he was instantly excited. Is this pie in the sky? Would it be better to give him a few more bugs like this? And this demonization sounds awesome. Just when he wanted to learn more about the newly acquired demonization, the system prompted that the demonization was unstable. But before he could continue to understand, he felt a sudden killing intention filling his mind. In an instant, Sha Chen fell down on the spot, rolling around on the deck holding his head. At this time, several people who heard the noise also turned their attention to Sha Chen. When they saw Sha Chen rolling around on the ground, they all showed horrified looks. Luffy hurried over, helped Sha Chen up and asked, Sha Chen, what's wrong with you? The remaining people also rushed over and looked at Sha Chen, who looked ferocious. What is going on? Sanji asked stammering. Zoro didn't say anything, but his expression had the same idea as Sanji. They were people who had seen the battle between Sha Chen and Hawkeye, and knew that Sha Chen was extremely powerful, much stronger than them. But now Sha Chen, such a strong man, is running around with his head in his hands and rolling around with a ferocious face. What the hell happened? Suddenly, Sha Chen opened his eyes. The original pair of golden pupils had disappeared, replaced by a pair of blood pupils. In an instant, a strong murderous intention enveloped the surroundings, making everyone feel trembling. Luffy looked a little anxious and couldn't help shouting. Sha Chen. Sha Chen's eyes instantly looked towards him. At this moment, Luffy felt as if he was facing Shinigami directly, and the strong pressure instantly made his back wet. Sha Chen said to everyone in a trembling voice. You go find Nami and the others quickly, and let me relax for a while by myself. Sha Chen's mind was filled with violent murderous intent at this time, which gradually swallowed up his reason. Just now, he even had the idea of killing everyone here. Fortunately, he relied on his strong willpower to temporarily contain the murderous intention. Otherwise, everyone here will suffer. But he wasn't sure how long he could suppress this murderous intention, which was why he was so eager to let them go first. But Luffy wanted to say something else but was interrupted by Sha Chen. Go quickly. After a moment of silence, Luffy stood up slowly and said, I know. Then he said, Zoro, Sanji, Joseph, let's go. After saying that, Luffy jumped off the boat and walked in a certain direction. Zoro and others followed Luffy after taking a look at Sha Chen. There must be a reason why Sha Chen would let them go. Just as Luffy believed in Sha Chen, he also believed that Sha Chen would handle it well. He is such a strong man. After everyone left, Sha Chen felt that his consciousness was getting less and less clear. If he continues like this, he will definitely lose control and kill everyone later. Thinking of this, Sha Chen galloped directly towards the seaside, and at the same time he didn't forget to say something about the system. System, what kind of rubbish bug is this? After waiting at the beach, Sha Chen plunged directly into the sea. The moment he entered the sea, his murderous intent was completely out of control. Both eyes were completely occupied by the violent killing intent, and at the same time, the body also underwent huge changes, and the clothes on his body turned directly into flowing black at this moment. Just like when Luffy transforms into Nika, his clothes turn white. At the same time, a black flame also appeared behind Sha Chen and surrounded him, and it was not extinguished even in the sea. The hair color also changed from black to blood color. The whole person looked like a demon who had stepped out of hell. At this time, there were many sea beasts around who didn't know whether to live or die and swam over after hearing the noise. Sha Chen looked at them with bloodthirsty eyes, full of violent killing intent. What follows is a violent massacre. At the same time, everyone on Luffy's side fell silent. They had just had a fight with Nami and met Johnny, who also told them about Nami killing Usopp. So now the scene has fallen into a dull atmosphere. Intel, why are you here? Hearing the familiar voice, everyone looked over with surprised expressions. Usopp, after some time. So, you mean Nami stabbed herself to save you? Zoro asked. Yes, Usopp nodded. Then the atmosphere was silent for a few seconds, before Luffy stood up and said. Since things are like this, then, let us take back our navigator. Understood, Captain. Zoro curled his lips and smiled. Then the group of people walked in the direction of Aaron Paradise. At this time, Nami was sitting on the ground, her eyes filled with helplessness and despair. No matter what, she could not stop the determination of the villagers to attack Aaron. They didn't want her to have to go through this anymore. Obviously she was willing to say it herself. Thinking that all the villagers in the village would eventually die in Aaron's hands, Nami collapsed completely. He picked up the knife in his hand and kept stabbing at the Arlong pirate's tattoo on his arm. There was also a desperate roar coming from his mouth. Ah, ah. Suddenly, Nami found that her arm was grabbed by something and couldn't move, so she looked back. I saw a completely different Sha Chen grabbing her arm and looking at her, with no emotion in his blood-colored eyes. Looking at Sha Chen, who was completely different except for his appearance and body shape, Nami was stunned and couldn't help but ask blankly. Sha Chen, what happened? How did you become like this? It's nothing, something went wrong with some stupid thing, and it's causing a bit of trouble now. Obviously the way he spoke was Sha Chen that Nami was familiar with, but she felt that Sha Chen was very unfamiliar at this time. Just because Sha Chen's tone was extremely cold, he no longer had the same feeling as before. Suddenly, Sha Chen knelt down and held her in his arms. Don't worry, I'm here. Nami, Aaron's existence has always made you suffer, causing you to lose your happiness at your best age. But this kind of day will never exist in the future. I will solve everything. After saying that, Sha Chen slowly stood up and turned his head. Be the navigator of our pirate group, you can't escape. After saying that, Sha Chen rose into the sky from where he was and flew quickly towards Aaron Paradise. Nami looked at Sha Chen who was getting farther and farther away, and the tears in her eyes were like bursting from a dam and she couldn't help but shed them anymore. He murmured. Thank you, Sha Chen. At the same time, an inexplicable feeling was also growing in her heart. Hey, Nami, you're here. Suddenly, Nami heard a voice coming from behind and couldn't help but turn her head to look. The moment he saw Luffy and the others, a smile appeared on his lips. She has now faced her own heart and will never lose this hard-won friendship again. And she knows Sha Chen well. If he says he can solve it, he will definitely solve it. So, Nami waved to everyone and said, Everyone, I'm here. Seeing the smile on Nami's face, everyone was stunned. Wasn't he looking sad just now? Why has it become like this now? Without thinking too much, Luffy ran over and said to Nami. Nami, let's go and defeat Aaron together. Let's free Kokoja village. No need. Nami shook her head and said. Why? Sha Chen has passed. When he first heard Nami's words, Luffy wanted to ask why, but when he heard the next sentence, he suppressed the words in his mouth. Sha Chen has gone. That's great. He will definitely be able to solve it if he goes. Luffy said happily. In his opinion, as long as he takes action against someone as strong as Sha Chen, the fishmen here will definitely be no match for him. But, you said Sha Chen has passed? Zoro asked with an ugly look on his face. Yeah, what's wrong? Nami is a little confused. Is there anything wrong with Sha Chen coming over? Zoro's expression changed several times, and finally he said slowly. I think Sha Chen's current state is not quite right. Just now when he was on the boat, he suddenly ran around with his head in his hands. At the same time, the moment he opened his eyes, I felt an unprecedented strong murderous intention. So something must have happened to him. Did you notice anything different about him just now? If you say so. Chapter 31. When he spoke just now, he seemed to have a kind of indifference that could repel people thousands of miles away, and his eyes were also extremely indifferent. At the same time, the whole person has become completely different from before, with blood-colored hair and blood-colored pupils, black flowing clothes, and black flames surrounding his back. Nami told everyone about the appearance of Sha Chen that she had just seen. After hearing Nami's words, Zoro strengthened his judgment. Something must have happened to Sha Chen. So he said directly to everyone, "Let's rush over and have a look." Good. Looking at Aaron's paradise getting closer and closer, the killing intent in Sha Chen's eyes became more and more obvious. Although he just said that killing so many sea beasts in the sea had slightly reduced his murderous nature and temporarily restored his clarity, it was not enough. He needs to kill more creatures. Otherwise, he is not sure whether he will be controlled by killing intent later. And on this island, the best choice is the Fishmen clan led by Aaron. So, he can only go on a killing spree. Anyway, there is no good person in this group of fishmen. As for the little octopus who will have a relationship with Rayleigh in the future, he is also there. That was not within his scope of consideration. He had already said when talking to Hawkeye before that he wanted to be a free pirate. Nothing can restrain him, so he can rely on his own heart. After a while, Sha Chen came to the door of Aaron Paradise. Also here, he also saw the villagers of Kokoja village. Without hesitation, he sent them to have a tryst with Duke Joe with a burst of Conqueror's domineering attitude. Otherwise, he is afraid that he will be unable to restrain himself if he takes action later. Sha Chen slowly landed in Aaron's paradise. All the fishmen looked at this person who fell from the sky with curiosity. One of the younger brothers slowly walked over and asked Sha Chen, "Hey, human, what are you here for?" Sha Chen didn't answer and didn't look at him. This immediately made him feel insulted. He raised his palm and patted Sha Chen. "Didn't you hear Lousy talking to you?" PFF'd. The sound of flesh and blood tearing was heard. Before the fish man could make any move, Sha Chen's hand came out from behind him and directly penetrated his entire body. In an instant, the fish man lost consciousness and lay on the ground. Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. This sudden scene made all the Murlocs present stunned for a moment. After reacting, Aaron roared at Sha Chen. "What have you done to my compatriots? Go and tear this human being to pieces. I'm going to throw him into the sea and feed him to the fish." All the fish people swarmed forward, but Sha Chen just smiled evilly, and then quickly shuttled among the crowd of fish people. Every time he passes through a place, it's like Shinigami passing through a border, and one fishman's life is being harvested by him one after another. Aaron's eyes were splitting when he saw this scene, and anger directly filled his eyes. The next second, he rushed directly towards Sha Chen. He wants to cut this human being who dares to kill his compatriots into pieces. But before his attack could land on Sha Chen's arm suddenly stretched out and grabbed his neck like a ghost. Sha Chen obviously looked smaller in size, but now he was lifting Aaron up like a dead dog. Aaron struggled wildly and kept beating Sha Chen's arm, but Sha Chen's arm was like a steel bar. No matter how hard he tried, it had no effect. Gradually, Sha Chen narrowed his eyes and crushed Aaron's neck. Immediately afterwards, Aaron's struggling body began to become weak, his hands dropped, and then he was thrown out by Sha Chen. "Ah, brother Aaron." The remaining fishmen who were not dead were extremely angry when they saw this scene, and they continued to attack Sha Chen without fear of death. And Sha Chen, as a good person, of course has to send them to hell. Every second, countless fishmen would die in Sha Chen's hands. For a time, Aaron's paradise turned into a bloody purgatory. Some time later, when Luffy and others arrived at the gate of Aaron's paradise, they saw scores of fallen villagers. Nami's pupils dilated instantly and she hurried over. At the same time, tears kept flowing out. Everyone, the situation seems a little wrong. When Nami picked up Ken, she found that he didn't have any injuries on his body. He didn't seem to be dead now, but sleeping. Nami checked again in disbelief. He is indeed sleeping, so that means. Nami then checked all the surrounding villagers and found that they were all asleep, which made her take a long breath. Fortunately everyone is okay, so now it's time to think about why everyone sleeps here together. According to her knowledge, there was only one person she knew who could do this. Nami turned his attention to air in paradise, and then hurriedly ran towards the door. When the gate of opening hit, Nami's pupils contracted violently. As if he had seen something unbelievable, he froze in place. Nami, what are you looking at here? Luffy slowly walked over from behind and asked Nami. However, when he saw the scene in Aaron's paradise, he also showed the same expression as Nami, and then shouted tremblingly. Sha-Chen. This shout also attracted the attention of Zoro and others, who slowly walked up, and then showed the same expression. This was not really a fuss for them, but the scene they saw in front of them shocked their vision. At this time, there was a river of blood in Aaron's paradise, with fallen murlocs everywhere. The blood of murlocs even dyed the pool inside red. But in the middle of this purgatory-like scene stood a man, covered in black flames, with blood-colored hair and blood-colored eyes, like a king who had stepped out of hell. This person is Sha-Chen. After killing all the fishmen, his murderous intention has finally been relieved. At this moment, he is trying his best to suppress this murderous intention. The black flames on his body fluctuated erratically. Sha-Chen. Nami was just about to go over when Zoro grabbed her arm, then looked at Sha-Chen with a solemn face and said. Sha-Chen is in a very strange state right now. Let's not go over there now. We will check the situation later. It might be dangerous if we go there hastily. Zoro's understanding of Sha-Chen is no less than Luffy's understanding of Sha-Chen, and because Zoro is more willing to observe, in some respects he is the person who knows Sha-Chen best. Judging from his previous impression of Sha-Chen was definitely not a murderous person, but today he killed all these fishmen here, leaving no one alive. This looked very abnormal. Thinking of Sha-Chen running around with his head in his hands, Zoro guessed that something must have happened to Sha-Chen that they didn't know about. But currently they have nothing to do about this situation and can only wait for Sha-Chen to solve it on his own. If they were strong, they could go and knock Sha-Chen out as a group. If he hadn't seen the battle between Sha-Chen and Eagle Eye, he might have had this idea. Now, giving away heads is a bad behavior. After some time, the black inflammation on Sha-Chen's body slowly disappeared, his blood-colored hair began to turn back to black, and the color of his pupils turned back to the golden color of his fiery eyes. Feeling the killing intent gradually subsided in his body, a smile appeared on Sha-Chen's lips. Guluo, you are so hard to control. Fortunately, he has a strong will that was honed by watching a bunch of action stars in his previous life. Otherwise, it would be really hard to bear it. Now that he has completely regained his clarity, he has too. System, can you explain to Lousy why there is a bug? This, you also know that I am just a system, so if there is a problem with the operation of my system, it should be normal for some bugs to appear, right? Sha-Chen was so angry when he heard what the system said, your grandma is so stupid. Then you can explain to me why the demonized form of the ape fruit has so many disadvantages. The fruit of host is in the form of Monkey King, who also encountered many injustices in the process of growing up, and naturally has a dark side in his heart, so by the way, you also inherited the dark side of the great sage, right? Before the system finished speaking, Sha-Chen interrupted it and said. Host, you are so smart. I don't care. You made such a serious mistake this time. The demonized state you gave me has such great disadvantages. What if I can't control my murderous intent and provoke a big pirate? So, you have made such a big mistake and you have to make it up to me, right? Now, Sha-Chen's legs were finally exposed. Yes, he just wants to reap benefits. Even though he has nothing to do now, the probability of encountering a big pirate as he mentioned is also very small. But a small probability does not mean that there is none. If there is, then rounding it off will make it 100%. It makes no sense not to compensate him. Then, what compensation does host want? There was a hint of caution in the system's voice. It was indeed a problem this time. As a moral system, it fails. For the sake of your sincere repentance, I don't ask too much, just get rid of the side effects of my demonic form, which is the murderous intention. Sha-Chen's voice sounded slightly expectant. Having experienced the demonic state, he deeply understands how powerful that form is. It completely made him stronger in all aspects, and it felt like Luffy in Nika form. Now let him use this form to fight Hawkeye. I don't say he can win, but he will definitely be able to last longer and force out more of Hawkeye's strength. However, this form also has two disadvantages. One of them is that the physical energy consumed will be relatively large. This is quite normal. Haven't you seen that every time Luffy switches to 5th gear, it feels like he's about to be buried? In comparison, this form of his only requires a little more energy consumption, which is already very good. Another shortcoming is the problem of murderous intention. In this form, the murderous intention has simply reached a peak. He wants to kill anyone he sees, and the longer he uses this form, the more murderous he becomes. The reason why the murderous intention was slowly fading just now is because he did not actively want to enter this form just now, he was forced to activate this form. At the same time, he has been restraining this murderous intention in his heart, so the more he kills, the smaller his murderous intention becomes. To put it simply, it is to kill the intention to kill. But he can't say it's like this every time, right? What if there aren't so many creatures to kill for him? What should we do? In this case, wouldn't this form only be used in critical situations? I don't dare to use it at all. Uncontrollable things are too dangerous. Host requirement detected, being analyzed. Analysis successful, host request rejected. The core of the demonized form is the killing intention. If the killing intention does not exist, then this form will lose its meaning. The system can make the killing intention controllable, but it cannot erase the killing intention. If the host must erase the murderous intention, then it must erase the form as well. Do you want to erase it? Sha Chen was stunned for a moment at first, then he immediately reacted and said quickly. Don't erase, don't erase. Just kidding, how could such a powerful form be erased? And, just now the system seemed to say that it could make this murderous intention controllable. It's a shortcoming that can be controlled and he's still worried about it. This is a huge advantage, right? Then Sha Chen immediately said to the system, then make the murderous intention controllable. As soon as he finished speaking, Sha Chen felt a strange energy pouring into his body, causing him to unconsciously close his eyes and carefully feel the changes in his body. Luffy here saw Sha Chen's appearance change back to his original appearance, and was about to go over and ask what was going on. But he only walked halfway and found that Sha Chen had entered the previous form again, which frightened him and took a few steps back. At the same time, an extremely powerful killing intent emanated from Sha Chen. At this moment, everyone felt as if they had entered a world of mountains of corpses and seas of blood, with countless corpses at their feet. A few seconds later, when everyone came back to their senses, they found that their bodies were soaked with sweat. Those who were timid like Usopp fell to the ground with weak legs. Even if he was as strong-minded as Zoro, he felt a trace of fear burst out of his heart at that moment. In an instant, everyone looked at Sha Chen with incomparable solemnity. What they didn't know was that Sha Chen felt very comfortable at this time. Just now after the change was completed, he felt as if he had something extra inexplicably. Then he couldn't help but turn on the demonic state, but the difference this time was that he was full of killing intent. But there is no sign of losing control. Instead, he can use these murderous intentions like an arm, causing physical and mental suppression to his opponents. After getting familiar with the killing intent, Sha Chen slowly opened his eyes, but saw Luffy and others next to him looking at him as if they were facing a formidable enemy. He couldn't help but asked curiously, "What are you doing?" Luffy did not answer immediately, but gulped before stammering and asked. Are you Sha Chen? Nonsense, you can't recognize me just standing here. But, I remember Sha Chen doesn't have black hair and black eyes. You are all red. Sha Chen is not wearing black clothes either. Besides, Sha Chen is not surrounded by black flames like you. Sha Chen, can't I dye my hair, put on contact lenses, change my clothes, and do some special effects? But Sha Chen knew that he would not be able to explain it clearly to a fool like Luffy, so he lifted his demonic state. The black flames wrapped around his body slowly disappeared, and his clothes and hair returned to their original colors, but his pupils were still golden. Because Sha Chen's eyes have turned into blazing eyes, there is nothing we can do. His is a bit different from the original Great Sage. It's not that he only uses it when he wants to, but it has basically become a normal skill of his. There is no consumption on him, just like his own innate ability. Is this okay? Sha Chen asked, looking at Luffy calmly. You can read more daily new novels on fictionzone.net. Both sites shared the same login details, so you don't need to sign up again. No, your eyes are the wrong color. You've been meowing to no end, haven't you? Sha Chen instantly appeared in front of Luffy with a shaver, and then hit him with a fist wrapped in an armed color. Clang! It hurts, it hurts. Luffy shouted loudly, covering the swollen bump on his head. So, do you think I am me? Sha Chen's gloomy voice came. Luffy couldn't help but look up. What caught his eye was Sha Chen's gloomy face, which made him shrink down in fright. He hurriedly replied, Yes, yes, you are Sha Chen. While answering, he got up and stepped back. Zoro looked at Sha Chen and asked, What was going on in your state just now? Why did you emit such strong killing intent? Oh, this. My abilities evolved, and then something went wrong. At that time, I was controlled by murderous intent, so I came here and killed all these fish men. Including the color of my current pupils are also changes caused by the evolution of my abilities. Ah, Nami couldn't help but exclaimed when she heard this, and then asked anxiously. Then are you still controlled by murder? You were so scary just now. Indeed, I think so too. Usopp said tremblingly after getting up. You just looked like you wanted to kill us all. Zoro also said lightly. Don't worry, it's okay. It was just a small accident. Now I can control this murderous intention. Didn't you see that I was able to communicate with you normally in that form just now? After hearing Sha Chen say that he could control this murderous intention, everyone couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. The killing intent released at that moment almost made them think that Sha Chen was going to kill them. I am so surprised. Sha Chen looked at the tragic situation around him and couldn't help but touch his nose. But he didn't feel guilty. Eren was not a good person, and he had killed countless humans. Nami also lived a miserable life in his hands for so many years. What he is doing now is completely eliminating harm for the people, and he even thinks that he should be awarded a banner. Then Sha Chen turned his attention to Nami, showed a smile and said, Nami, you are free. Yeah, I'm free. Nami smiled equally happily. Luffy also regained the courage to yell at Sha Chen, You are so treacherous, Sha Chen. I was obviously planning to fight off this Eren, but in the end, you took it all away. That's right, he killed all the prey by himself. How selfish. Zoro also pouted at the side. Indeed, I also want to observe the fishman's body structure to better handle the ingredients. This is what Sanji said. I actually don't mind at all. I totally agree with you helping me defeat my opponent. As for this cowardly sentence, no one except Usopp could say it. After hearing their words, Sha Chen didn't say anything, but raised his hand slightly and pointed at Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji in turn. You, and you. It's all rubbish. What did you say? The three people who heard this couldn't help it, and looked at Sha Chen with eyes full of anger. What did I say wrong? An idiot captain, a half-dead third-rate swordsman, and a lecherous cook with curled eyebrows. What's wrong with calling you trash? Or do you think that comparing you to trash is an insult to the word trash? In that case, I apologize. It does seem a bit insulting and rubbish. Sha Chen wanted to say something more, but Luffy and the other two could no longer bear it. Go up and beat him. As soon as the words fell, the three of them rushed towards Sha Chen. Hey, 3 against 1, you don't have martial ethics. Seeing this scene, Nami felt particularly happy and couldn't help laughing. It's really fun to stay with them. In the evening 2 days later, Kokoja village. Hey, Luffy, I fell in love with this piece of meat first. What do you mean by taking it away? Sha Chen yelled at Luffy with a piece of meat in his mouth. You didn't take it. You said it's what you like. Luffy said disdainfully. You guy. Sha Chen couldn't help but clenched his fists, but suddenly he seemed to think of something, and a sinister smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. If you dare to mess with me, I will let you know why the flowers are so red later. Sha Chen saw an opportunity and directly received all the meat in front of Luffy into his own system space, then ran away after collecting it. Luffy, who was eating, suddenly saw the meat in front of him disappear and was stunned for a moment, but when he saw Sha Chen running in the distance, he immediately understood something. He shouted angrily, Sha Chen, you are cheating. Sha Chen said without looking back, I got the meat based on my ability, why am I cheating? Seeing Sha Chen walking away, Luffy jumped up in anger. Fortunately, this time, everything in Kokoja village is self-service. If you run out, you can take it again, otherwise he would really bite Sha-Chen to death. In one of the alleys, Sanji slowly walked towards Zoro with a bottle of red wine, and then sat down opposite Zoro. It's quite comfortable to not have to cook for yourself sometimes. By the way, how are you feeling after your injury? Zoro took a sip of wine and said, "Ah, it's okay. This kind of injury can be cured by just drinking some wine." After that, he took another sip of wine. You really, Sanji is a little helpless, this drunkard. Zoro said, but it's the third day, is it still so lively? This is how a banquet is held. After all, they have been oppressed by Eren for so many years. Now that they are liberated, it is normal for them to be happy. That's right. Sanji threw the red wine in his hand to Zoro, then slowly stood up and said, "Okay, it's time for me to get down to business. Beautiful ladies, here I come. This pervert cook." On the other side, Usopp was also very happy telling his brave story on a high platform. You don't know, I punched Eren to death and made him kneel down to beg for mercy. See Gui, you are so awesome. The whole village was immersed in a happy atmosphere at this time. Enjoy this free life without oppression. On a hillside on the island, a lonely grave stood quietly on the top. At this time, there was a girl with orange hair sitting in front of the grave, with a happy smile on her face. You can read more daily new novels on fictionzone.net. Both sites shared the same login details, so you don't need to sign up again. Belmir, do you know? Eren is defeated and the village is finally free. And I'm going to be a pirate too. If you were still here, you would definitely support me, right? But it's useless. Even if you don't support me, I won't listen to you anyway. After finishing speaking, Nami fell silent for a long time. Suddenly, a voice came from behind her. Hey, what are you doing? This voice is. Nami turned around and saw that Sha-Chen was staring at her with a smile not far away. Then he slowly walked towards her and sat down next to her. Sha-Chen, why are you here? Nami's voice was filled with surprise. I found that the navigator on our ship was not at the banquet. Why didn't I come out to look for him? What did you talk about with your mother? We chatted a lot and basically told her everything. That's great. Your mother would be happy if she knew you were like this. I think so too. Nami blinked at Sha-Chen and said with a smile. Suddenly, Sha-Chen's eyes focused on Nami's arm. He looked there in a daze and couldn't help but ask. You have this tattoo. Oh, you said this, it's a pattern composed of oranges, windmills and the sun. Sha-Chen was a little confused when he heard Nami's answer. Of course he knew that the tattoos were these three patterns. But the question is, why is there an extra sun? Did he remember that in the original novel, Nami only had oranges and windmills tattooed on her arms? The windmill is in memory of his hometown, Kokoja village, and the orange is in memory of his mother, Belmir. So what is this sudden extra sun for? However, Sha-Chen didn't ask Nami about the meaning of the sun. Maybe there was something new worth remembering. Suddenly, the atmosphere between the two began to become silent. After a long time, Nami said, I plan to leave all the 100 million belly earned during this period to the villagers. The villagers' life has been quite miserable under Eren's oppression for so many years. Okay, Sha-Chen nodded, and then said, the villagers can be proud of being able to get berry from you. After all, who doesn't know that you have nothing to lose? Is 100 million belly enough? If not, I have a few 100 million more. After hearing the first half of the sentence, Nami wanted to pinch Sha-Chen, but the next sentence left her stunned. He couldn't help but ask blankly. Do you have any personal money? Hey, what is private money? I'm not married, this word is very incorrect. It's just a few 100 million coffins that were saved occasionally, not worth mentioning. Sha-Chen waved his hand, with a Versailles expression on his face. But the next second, Nami came over and grabbed his neck, shook him hard and asked. Where did you come from, Barry? Don't shake. Sha-Chen felt like his stomach was turning. He had been eating and drinking at the banquet just now, and now he felt like he would vomit after being shaken so violently. Nami stopped shaking Sha-Chen, but turned her hand to grab Sha-Chen's collar. At the same time, she looked at Sha-Chen with evil eyes and asked. Tell me the truth, Where did your berry come from? Can you not say this? Sha Chen said with a guilty look on his forehead, a drop of sweat dripping down his forehead. No, say it quickly. Looking at Nami's increasingly fierce eyes, Sha Chen wanted to slap himself. Tell you to talk too much. Isn't it good to keep your own treasures by yourself? If you have to tell me, don't you understand that wealth should not be exposed? You must have drunk too much to say this. Drinking is misleading. Sha Chen said slowly. I took a little bit from Crow before, and then I also took 100 million points from Aaron's Paradise this time. Finally, it was the Marine who came the day before yesterday. Do you remember? Is that the one who looks like a mouse? Nami asked after recalling it. That's right, I also got 100 million points of berry from him. Actually, it's not much. Not much means how many? Nami asked immediately. 5 million berries. Sha Chen tentatively reported a number. But Nami didn't say anything, but stared at him intently. Hey, don't look at me like that. I'm not lying to you. It's really. Well, actually it's 10 million berries. Nami still didn't speak, still looking at him quietly. No, I really didn't lie to you. It's really just 20 million berries. After a while, Nami stared at the pile of treasures in front of her with shining eyes, while Sha Chen on the other side was a little speechless. Nami turned to look at Sha Chen and said angrily, Mr. Sha Chen, you are so awesome. In just a short time, you got 100 million belly. If it were me, I don't know how long it would take me to get so much. Also, I asked why the treasure on Crow's ship was empty last time. It turned out that you were the first to take action. You are indeed the originator of the rescue. You are so quick to take action now. Hearing Nami's sarcastic words, Sha Chen didn't say anything, but gave her a hateful look. He asked unwillingly. You have to give me at least 10 million berries out of 100 million berries, right? Otherwise it's a bit unreasonable. This is the result of my hard work for so long. Well, Nami pondered for a moment, then said, you make sense. Sha Chen's eyes lit up. Really, I think it makes sense too. In this case, Nami took out a pile of berries from a pile of treasures on the ground, worth about 100,000, and handed it to Sha Chen. Here, I'll give this to you. You can't take any more. Any more will make it unjustifiable. In an instant, Sha Chen's anger level increased rapidly, and he was about to become a Super Saiyan. After a few breaths, Sha Chen slowly suppressed the anger in his heart and watched Nami snort and take the 100,000 belly from her hand. Don't give it up for free. Although 100,000 berries is a little less, it will be more if you save it. Wealth is accumulated. Then Sha Chen looked at Nami and said hummingly, you can just move this pile of treasures back by yourself, hum. Then he slowly turned around and walked down the mountain. He wanted to leave this sad place. Looking at Sha Chen's angrily leaving figure, Nami couldn't help but laugh out loud. Why do you feel Sha Chen is cute for no reason? Then her eyes couldn't help but fall on the sun pattern on her arm. There was a hint of tenderness in his eyes. You can read more daily new novels on fictionzone.net. Both sites shared the same login details, so you don't need to sign up again. She will never forget that one day a man appeared in her world, hugged her and said, don't worry, I'm here. At that moment, she felt that this man was like the sun lighting up her dark world. It was also from that moment that she decided that no matter what happened in the future, she would face it bravely, because she had him by her side. The sun is really a beautiful thing. Sha Chen walked slowly on the way down the mountain, holding the 100,000 berries in his hands. The next moment, a smile appeared on his lips and he put the 100,000 berries into the system space. Then he turned and glanced in Nami's direction. Then he continued walking down the mountain. I couldn't help but think proudly. Young man, are you trying to show off your acting skills with me? I wonder if he goes to act, will he definitely get an Oscar? That's right, Sha Chen doesn't only have 100 million berries. Just kidding, the entire savings of the Arlong pirates over the years are more than this. And when Colonel Mouse came that day, he not only asked him for help, but followed him directly back to Marine Station. Just a small visit to the entire Marine branch. Even Sha Chen himself didn't know how much treasure he got, but it should be about 300 million berries. Because the treasures he just gave to Nami were only 1/3 of his total treasures. Thinking of this, Sha Chen had to sigh that these two guys are really fat, and they made him rich instantly. But the distress he showed in front of Nami just now is also true. Although he only took out part of it, it was still 1/3. It's just like cutting blood. It seems that I must never expose the fact that I am rich in front of Nami in the future, otherwise I don't know how I will be exploited. Well, since you are in such an unhappy mood, let's go ahead and have a drink. The next morning, on the coast, Sha Chen and others continued to transport things to the melee, and at the same time, he also placed a lot of things in his own system space. Most of them are ingredients, but there is a lot less meat to eat. Now that Sanji is on board, we can stock up on more ingredients instead of cooked food. After all, Sanji's food is much better than most restaurants. After transporting all the supplies, Sha Chen lay on the bow of the melee. Under the warm sunshine and the gentle sea breeze, Sha Chen fell asleep again without knowing it. It wasn't until there was a noise that he woke up in a daze. Sha Chen slowly sat up and looked towards the place where the sound came from. At this time, Nami was standing behind the crowd and glanced at Sha Chen. At this moment, Sha Chen immediately understood what she meant and shouted to everyone on the boat, "Weigh anchor and sail the boat." "What? But Nami hasn't," Usopp asked doubtfully, but was interrupted by Sha Chen before he finished speaking. Believe me, seeing Sha Chen's appearance, everyone on the boat started to take action out of trust in Sha Chen, and then the boat slowly started moving. The villagers standing on the shore still didn't know what happened. I couldn't help but ask curiously, why did this ship sail? But after only a moment of curiosity, they returned their attention to Nami in front of them. Jien told them about Nami leaving 100 million belly to them. Everyone was very moved at this time. It was obvious that she had worked hard to steal it for so many years. Xiao Na, let us say goodbye to you properly, don't leave in a hurry. It's just that we haven't thanked you properly yet. Quote. After listening to the villagers' words, Nami showed a smile, and then said lightly, "That's not necessary." As soon as she finished speaking, Nami began to shuttle among the crowd. When she walked past everyone, she finally arrived at the shore. Then, using the inertia of the sprint, he jumped hard and finally landed firmly on the armrest of the melee. The villagers at the back were still wondering why Nami didn't say goodbye to them before leaving, but they understood instantly when they saw Nami's next move. I saw Nami standing on the deck, lifting her shirt up slightly, and then each wallet dropped on the boat like dumplings. That is, a huge shout broke out from the crowd. How brave you are, you little brat. You little thief cat, you are still a thief and you even steal the wallets of people in the village. Nami, never let me see you again. Xiao Na, you must take good care of yourself. Be happy forever. The initial curses among the villagers gradually turned into blessings and reluctance to leave Nami. And Nami couldn't help but shed tears looking at this scene. Everyone, goodbye. A few days later, somewhere above the sea, a pirate ship with a straw hat skull and crossbones flag was sailing slowly. At this time, some discordant sounds came from the ship. What do you mean? Why has the price of newspapers increased? Nami squinted at the newspaper delivery bird in front of her, her eyes filled with displeasure. Then he pointed at it and said, I won't buy it if the price goes up again next time, you know. It's just money for a newspaper, is this necessary? Usopp asked curiously from the side. You don't understand. 1 day is 1 share, so 10 days is not 10 shares. If you add up a little, it's not a small amount. The more things like Barry, the better. I don't want to be a beautiful girl who doesn't have money to dress up. Usopp. Then Nami sat on the stool, flipped through the newspaper he just got, and said, the sea has not been peaceful lately, and some turbulent things have happened. Just when Nami finished reading this page and turned to the next page, 2 pieces of paper fell from the middle of the newspaper. Well, this is it. Nami picked it up and looked at it curiously. The next second, her eyes widened with a horrified expression. Reward order. A sudden shout attracted everyone's attention. Everyone showed interest when they heard the reward order. Wow, there are a full 25 million berry. Luffy said happily, holding the reward in his hand. Usopp on the side also smiled and said, now the whole world can see my heroic appearance. Sanji was a little curious when he heard this and couldn't help but ask. Isn't this Luffy's reward order? Why do you say this? Hey, who said I can't show up because of Luffy's bounty? Here, let me show you my uncle, Usopp said as he pointed to a place where Luffy's bounty was placed. Sanji, you obviously only exposed the back of your head. So what? At least I can appear on the reward order, can you? Sanji was full of dissatisfaction, but could not think of anything to retort for the moment. At this time, Nami, who was standing by, could not stand it anymore and said to them angrily. Do you think being rewarded is a good thing? It means we will be in constant trouble in the future. Do you understand it or not? But Luffy and Usopp didn't care about her and were still entertaining themselves. Seeing this, Nami couldn't help but sigh. Hey, I feel tired. But these are not the things that worry her the most. What worries her more now is. From the corner of Nami's eyes, she glanced at Sha Chen, who was leaning on the boat. Hey, Sha Chen, are you also offering a reward? Sanji asked Sha Chen after seeing what he had in his hand. That's right, Sha Chen nodded. When they heard this, Luffy and Usopp, who were playing around, stopped and all came to Sha Chen. Sha Chen, how much is your reward? Well, I'm afraid you won't be able to accept it if I tell you, so you better see it for yourselves. Sha Chen handed the reward order in his hand to everyone. 300 million belly. The three of them couldn't help but gasped and screamed. Hey, you guys are so noisy. Zoro woke up in a daze and looked at several people and complained. But at this time, the three of them opened their mouths wide and didn't pay attention to what he said at all. Zoro walked over slowly, saw the reward order turned over on the ground, and couldn't help but pick it up curiously. Then, the number of people with widened eyes and mouths increased from the original 3 to 4. The picture on the reward order is what Sha Chen looks like after being transformed into a demon. He's a bit handsome. But the title below is what Sha Chen is most satisfied with. Demon King Sha Chen. This is the title Marine gave Sha Chen. For a time, Sha Chen had an inexplicable liking for the person in Marine who proposed this title. All I can say is that he is very smart. Luffy asked unwillingly, why is your bounty so high? It's 10 times as much as mine. No. Sha Chen waved his hand, and then said seriously. We must be more rigorous when speaking, not 10 times, but 12 times. As for why the bounty is so high, I don't know. Maybe they notice the strong aura in me. After all, I'm not like some weaklings who only have a bounty of 25 million, and there are even a few who don't even have a bounty. It's embarrassing to say that. If I were these people, I wouldn't even dare to say that I'm a pirate. There's not even a bit of bounty on it. To say it's a pirate is an insult to the word pirate. Sha Chen said in an arrogant tone, while raising his head slightly, looking at the few novices in front of him with contempt in his eyes. In an instant, the eyes of the 4 people in front of him were blazing with fire, and they looked at Sha Chen with evil eyes. Everyone. Zoro opened his mouth calmly, and then the other 3 people had a tacit understanding at this time and rushed towards Sha Chen at the same time. Bang, bang. This is how an unfair 4-on-1 battle began. Hey, I didn't say it was you, why are you taking the seats yourself? Sha Chen said unwillingly. But only the fists of 4 people responded to him. Seeing this, Sha Chen also became angry. Lousy, how can someone like Lousy, who has a bounty of 300 million on his head, be bullied by a few of you who collectively don't have as much as me? Die to Lousy. Bang, bang. At the same time, Luffy and Sha Chen's bounty orders were also known around the world. The East China Sea, somewhere on the sea. On a Heart Skull pirate ship, a man with a red nose gritted his teeth as he looked at Luffy's bounty. As for Sha Chen's reward order next to him, he ignored it. Although the bounty of 300 million is very high, it has nothing to do with him. The Straw Hat Boy is his enemy. Buggy didn't recognize Sha Chen in the reward order at all, mainly because the gap between Sha Chen's normal image and his demonized image was indeed a bit big. It makes sense that Buggy wouldn't recognize him. Straw Hat Boy, if it weren't for you, Lousy wouldn't be in this situation now. When Lousy finds you, he will definitely kill you. Is he the one who defeated you? A woman with a good figure and a beautiful face asked calmly as she walked out of the darkness. Unfortunately, I was also beaten away by him. The pain is still very impressive to this day. Whose nose are you talking about? Erida, did she say this just now? Why didn't she have any impression? Buggy, if you have a bad ear, you can have it cured. I said Straw Hat Boy is our common enemy. If you want to deal with him, bring me with you. Huh, I didn't expect you to have a grudge against Straw Hat. Buggy asked in surprise. Although he has been on this ship for a while, he really doesn't know what happened between Arita and the Straw Hat Boy. It seems that this Straw Hat Boy is really a troublemaker and can get involved with anyone. I think so too, Arita said, licking her bright red lips. You actually said I have a red nose. The island where the red-haired pirates are located is located offshore. A crossboat slowly approached the island. Several pirates on duty suddenly saw something on the sea in the distance, and couldn't help but pick up their telescopes and take a look. It doesn't matter if you don't look at it, it almost scares their souls out of their wits when they look at it. Eagle, Hawkeye. When Eagle Eye came to the island, he ignored these minions and walked directly towards the center. After a while, he walked in front of the red hair and others. The red-haired man was a little surprised to see Hawkeye's arrival, and then said dully, Hawkeye, are you here for a duel with me? I'm a little uncomfortable right now. I never thought about dueling with a man who had a broken arm. Hawkeye said calmly. I just suddenly remembered the pirate you mentioned before and came to show it to you. As he said that, Hawkeye took out Luffy's bounty list and handed it to the red-haired man. Luffy. A smile suddenly appeared on the red-haired face, and his eyes stayed on Luffy's reward order. It's really been a long time. Just when the red-haired man wanted to say something, Hawkeye's words stopped him in place. By the way, I also brought your nephew's reward list this time, but he looks a little strange. Huh, the redhead blinked. He understood every word Hawkeye said, but why couldn't he understand it when connected together? My nephew, the redhead asked again uncertainly. Looking at the red hair's expression, Hawkeye was also confused. Don't you know your own nephew? Could it be? After some time, the red-haired man and Hawkeye sat together, taking a sip or two of the wine next to them from time to time. But both of them remained silent in tacit agreement. Time passed like this for another 10 seconds. Ha ha ha, this kid, I didn't know I had such a nephew. It's interesting. And the first bounty was 300 million. Could it be that he did something earth-shattering? This makes me want to meet my nephew. Hawkeye next to him said calmly with an unhappy tone. If nothing else goes wrong, I should take part of the credit for the bounty he has placed. I fought with him once at sea, and the reason he convinced me to fight him was because he said he was your nephew. I guess the battle between me and him was known somehow, so his bounty is so high. But his strength is definitely worth the bounty. Huh, the red-haired man looked at him in surprise after hearing what Hawkeye said. I've rarely heard you approve of a young man so much. Hawkeye took another sip of wine and said calmly. Although I'm a little upset that this kid lied to me, to be honest, his personality is quite to my liking, and his strength is basically unmatched by anyone at his age. But no matter what, he lied to me this time. It seems that I have to have a good communication with him next time I meet him. Ha ha ha, Hawkeye, don't be so stingy. I recognize this nephew, so I don't think he is lying to you. Hawkeye, don't you know that in certain cases it is useless to promise after the fact? A faint smile appeared on the redhead's lips, looking into the distance. Why do you want to meet this nephew? East China Sea, aboard the Melee. Oh, is Rog Town just ahead? I really want to go quickly and see the place where One Piece was born and died. Luffy hugged the goat head of the Melee with one hand and did it with the other hand. Look out. On the more spacious deck on the other side of the ship, the sound of gold and iron was heard constantly. At this time, Zoro was holding the word Wado Yimin and slashed forward. The whirring sound of breaking through the air symbolized the power of this knife, but at this time, this seemingly powerful blow was clamped by two dark fingers and could not move. Sha Chen held Zoro's knife between his two fingers and patted his mouth with his other hand, making a bored and sleepy expression. It's full of irony. Did you see it? This is the difference between no bounty and a bounty of 300 million. The difference is unimaginable by a third-rate swordsman like you. Sha Chen said calmly, but at this time, he looked at Zoro with a slightly helpless look. For some reason, since he saw Sha Chen's 300 million bounty a few days ago, he didn't know if he was ashamed that he didn't have any bounty at all. During this period, he came to challenge Sha Chen every day. At first, Sha Chen was quite interested in playing with Zoro a few times, but the gap between Zoro's current strength and him was really a bit big. So after playing for a few times, Sha Chen lost interest and just knocked Zoro down casually. But Zoro was like taking the wrong medicine. He kept challenging Sha Chen, even if Sha Chen didn't agree to him. He directly attacked Sha Chen, regardless of whether Sha Chen agreed or not. This makes Sha Chen very angry, just because he won't kill him, right? Later, when Sha Chen really got annoyed, he actually struck a little harder, but Zoro was still the same, always looking for a fight with Sha Chen as soon as he got better. Now for Sha Chen, fighting with Zoro every day has become his daily task. But there is one thing to say, Zoro is indeed a little stronger now than when he first challenged him. Although it is still a serious matter for him, the growth is indeed real. So now Sha Chen also wants to understand that in order to improve Zoro's strength, he should reluctantly be his sparring partner. Who makes him a deputy captain who thinks about the crew? Sha Chen flicked Zoro's knife away and said to him. The speed is good, but the strength is too bad. So, how is your understanding of the iron-cutting realm now? It's still a little bit close. It always feels very close, but there is just a missing opportunity. That's it, Sha Chen touched his chin. Thanks to his presence, Zoro came into contact with the realm of cutting iron a while earlier than in the original work. But this thing can only be understood by Zoro himself. As for the way of swordsmanship, he knows everything from 7 to 6, he knows nothing. His only role may be to be Zoro's sparring partner. Hey, we've arrived in Rog Town. Sanji's voice came from the bow of the boat, attracting Sha Chen's attention. Is it finally here? A smile appeared on Sha Chen's lips. He is still very interested in Rog Town. Of course, it's not because this is the place where One Piece was born and died. He is not interested in this. What really interested him was someone in Rogue Town at this point in time. Of course, another very important thing is that you can check into a new island again. I wonder what good things I can get this time. After some time, ding, I successfully played in Rogue Town, and my arrogance has been upgraded to intermediate level. As the sound of the system fell, a feeling of clarity suddenly appeared in Sha Chen's mind. When the feeling dissipated, Sha Chen unconsciously exuded his domineering aura. After feeling it carefully, Sha Chen showed a happy smile. Although the improvement of the domineering power of the world has not greatly improved his strength, but his range of perception and perception are enhanced. This is still pretty good. It was just convenient for what he was going to do next. Rog Town is the last island opened in the East China Sea. The next time I visit the island, it will only be in the Grand Channel. Thinking of this, Sha Chen couldn't help but open his system panel to see how much stronger he was now compared to when he started. Name: Sha Chen. Fruit: Renren Fruit Monkey King Form Intermediate. Ability: Indestructible Body Intermediate Level Flaming Eyes, 6 Postures, Demonized Form. Armed Color Dominance, Elementary. Informed and Domineering, Intermediate. Conqueror's Hockey, Elementary. Okay, Sha Chen can't estimate his own strength by looking at the panel. His panel is a bit simple. And even though a lot of the things here are elementary, the gold content of this elementary level is quite high. Take the primary weapon color that Sha Chen now masters as an example, combined with his battles during this period. He came to a conclusion. His weapon color level now is similar to Luffy's original weapon color level 2 years later. You must know that Luffy practiced for a long time before he reached this level. And Sha Chen only needs to simply check in on the island, which is so exciting. While thinking, Sha Chen and others had arrived at the outskirts of Rog Town. Luffy said, I want to go to the execution platform and take a look. I'm going to buy a knife. I'm going to buy clothes. I'm going to buy equipment. I'm going to buy ingredients. I'm going, without telling you. For a moment, everyone looked towards Sha Chen. You're a bit unbecoming of a human being. You've concealed your whereabouts, right? This is what everyone wanted to say, but Sha Chen disappeared before they could say this. Everyone who saw this scene couldn't help but feel itchy with hatred. Let's see if you can still play like this when they become stronger. Immediately, everyone separated here and walked towards their own destinations. Sha Chen quickly shuttled through Rogtown, and at the same time, he used all his strength to sense the surroundings. Suddenly, when he passed by a place, he heard a familiar name. Are you Luffy? This discovery made Sha Chen stop and step forward, wondering in his heart. Isn't Luffy going to the execution platform? It seems to be quite far away from the execution platform. Could it be that Luffy also inherited Zoro's road crazy attribute? When Sha Chen saw the specific situation, he couldn't help but twitch the corners of his mouth slightly. First saw a marine smoking a cigar looking at the pirate in front of him with a condescending expression. What he said just now was also what he said. Smoker, Sha Chen whispered softly. Then he was about to leave. He was not interested in Smoker. But many times if you don't look for trouble, trouble will find you. Hey, that guy over there, wait. Smoker's voice came from behind. Sha Chen turned his head, showing a puzzled expression. Are you talking about me? Yes, it's you. Have we met somewhere? Smoker asked uncertainly. He always felt that Sha Chen's appearance was very familiar, and he was sure that he had only seen him recently, but he couldn't remember it, so he asked Sha Chen directly. No, Master Marine, this is my first time coming to this island. Sha Chen said helplessly, spreading his hands. Well, Smoker looked at Sha Chen and pondered. Looking at Sha Chen's face, I just feel more and more familiar. After all, such handsome people are rare. While Smoker was brainstorming, the pirate next to him who was mistaken for Luffy was unhappy. What do you mean, being in a daze in front of him, a vicious pirate, right? Do you dare to respect his identity as a pirate? So, he couldn't help it. Marine, you dare to ignore me like this, go to hell. As soon as he finished speaking, the pirate took out a pistol from his pocket and fired several shots at Smoker. But what happened next almost made his eyes pop out. When the bullet hit Smoker's body, it penetrated directly, and Smoker's body turned into white smoke. Weird, monster. The pirate was so frightened that he slumped to the ground and looked at Smoker with fear in his eyes. This was the first time he saw a human who was immune to pistols. Smoker ignored him and waved gently. The few Marines behind him instantly understood what he meant, and walked up to the pirate to subdue him. This level of pirates is more than enough for even an ordinary Marine to deal with. At this moment, Smoker was still trying his best to search for memories in his mind, trying hard to remember who Sha Chen was. 1 minute later, Sha Chen looked at Smoker who was still thinking and couldn't help but said. Mr. Marine, if there's nothing else, I'll leave first. Smoker still didn't speak, still looking thoughtful. Seeing this scene, Sha Chen ignored him and turned around and walked back. However, before Sha Chen took a few steps, Smoker's voice came from behind. Demon King, Sha Chen, huh? Sha Chen turned his head in confusion, looked at Smoker and asked in confusion. Master Marine, are you talking about me? Smoker looked at Sha Chen's face and couldn't help but take out the reward warrant in his arms. After some comparison, he asked again. Are you the Demon King Sha Chen? He said that the more he looked at it, the more familiar it seemed. It turned out that he had seen Sha Chen's reward order this morning, but because the image on the reward order was a little different from the current image of Sha Chen, he didn't react at once. It made him think about it for so long. Sha Chen made a surprised expression and said fearfully, Mr. Marine, what are you talking about? How could I be a criminal on the wanted order? Although I say I look a bit like him, I'm really not him. You don't want to fish for law enforcement, do you? Speaking of this, Sha Chen looked just right and angry. Smoker took a deep look at Sha Chen, and then instantly turned into a white wave of air and rushed towards Sha Chen. But Sha Chen stood there blankly, as if he didn't react. As Smoker's fist got closer and closer, Sha Chen still did not dodge. Finally, Smoker's fist stopped 1 centimeter in front of Sha Chen, and the wind from the fist blew up Sha Chen's hair. Hi, Marine is hitting someone, Sha Chen yelled, and the voice resounded through the sky, attracting the attention of everyone around him. But when they saw Smoker here, they all turned their attention back. They saw nothing. Smoker looked at the frightened Sha Chen in front of him and said nothing. Instead, he took out a stack of Baileys from his pocket, which seemed to be worth tens of thousands. I'm sorry, this is the only Bailey I have on me. After saying that, Smoker turned around and walked elsewhere. What he didn't see was that the corners of Sha Chen's mouth turned up a little after he left. Sha Chen shook Bailey in his hand. Another prophet. If Sha Chen didn't want Smoker to discover his identity now and cause him to search for him all over the town, Sha Chen would have just shaved off and left. But now the result is not bad. As for why Sha Chen didn't hide away until Smoker was about to attack him until the last moment. Is it because you believe in Smoker? Of course, this was partly because Sha Chen didn't believe that a Kainu would be merciful if he was facing him. It is a Kainu's principle of life to rather kill the wrong person than let him go. But the most important thing is that Sha Chen has sharp eyes and can observe Smoker's internal condition at all times. This was the real reason why Sha Chen didn't dodge until the last moment. Otherwise, you really have to rely on trusting the other person's character, which would be too unrealistic. After casually putting the berry in his hand into the system space, Sha Chen continued to gallop through Rog Town. 10 minutes later, when Sha Chen sensed a certain breath, the corners of his mouth raised slightly, revealing a smile. Finally found it. Sha Chen came to the place where he sensed the aura and found that it was a very old tavern. It was quiet inside and there was not a single voice from a customer. But, now there is. Sha Chen pushed the gate of opening and walked in. The two people inside unconsciously turned their eyes when they heard the door open. One of them is a man in a green cloak sitting outside the bar, and the other is an old man sitting inside the bar who looks like the boss. Yo, hello, boss, give me a glass of rum. Sha Chen walked directly to the bar and said to the old man. Although the old man was a little surprised by Sha Chen's arrival, he still went to get him a glass of wine. Taking advantage of the old man's break to get the wine, Sha Chen greeted the man next to him. Hello, Dragon, are you here to meet Luffy? As soon as Sha Chen finished speaking, an extremely powerful conqueror's domineering energy emanated from the dragon and pressed towards Sha Chen. At the same time, his eyes were sharp as he looked at Sha Chen and asked word by word. Who are you? Why do you know me? And, you seem to know something. At this time, Sha Chen, who was opposite him, felt a sense of oppression on his body. On the surface, he was very calm, but deep down he was very surprised. Should I be said to be worthy of being the leader of the Revolutionary Army? This conqueror's dominance is so powerful. Sha Chen replied calmly. Don't be so nervous. I'm the vice captain of the spaceship. If you've seen his reward order, you should have seen mine too. After hearing this, Long seemed to think of something, then looked at Sha Chen and asked uncertainly. Demon King Sha Chen. Bingo. Sha Chen snapped his fingers, a touch of pride appearing on his face. Not because of anything else, but because this title is really. It felt so good to his heart that he couldn't help but give a thumbs up to the person in Marine who had this title. You are a bit different from the bounty order, Long said calmly, and then the conqueror's domineering energy disappeared from him. After learning that Sha Chen was a crew member on the Lu spaceship, Long became less vigilant towards Sha Chen. He believed in Luffy's vision and the quality of the companion he found would definitely not be bad. Wouldn't do anything to harm him. But in a blink of an eye, he asked another question that he was more curious about. By the way, how did you know about the relationship between Luffy and me? Garp said that. Sha Chen said seriously that he was lying. As long as the person involved is not here, Sha Chen will try his best to make him go away. Anyway, this is not the first time he has done this. After hearing Sha Chen's words, Long Busuo wanted him, because not many people knew that Luffy was his son. And Garp has the greatest chance of doing such a thing. So this is normal. But since Garp can tell Sha Chen this, it proves that the man in front of him is a trustworthy person. Suddenly, Long's eyes became much more friendly when he looked at Sha Chen. Sha Chen was also completely relieved. People who have been double certified by his Laozi and his son, he can rest assured. So, why did you come to me this time? Long asked curiously. He didn't know that Sha Chen knew that he was on the island in advance, he just thought he was discovered by chance. Nothing, I just came to meet the leader of the Revolutionary Army, Luffy's father. Look at the courage of a leader who dares to openly oppose the world government. So how do you feel now that you've seen it? Long asked with a raised brow. Not bad. Sha Chen pondered for a moment and then said seriously. Ha 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 ha. Long suddenly laughed, looking at Sha Chen with an inexplicable meaning in his eyes. I thought that my strength was pretty good in this world, and I thought my courage was pretty good, but I didn't expect that you only had an okay rating. Boy, your scoring standards are quite high. Of course, after all, I use myself as the standard to judge, so naturally it's just a little higher. Oh, Long became interested when he heard this and couldn't help but ask, so your evaluation of yourself is average? No, no, no. Sha Chen shook his head, and after thinking for a while, he said, that means simply being number one in the world. Long was stunned on the spot. Your evaluation of me is okay, but your evaluation of yourself is the best in the world, right? However, Long was a person who had seen the world. He was not angry, but said calmly, you are quite confident in yourself, which is a good thing, but young people still need to restrain themselves. Too much confidence is not a good thing. So, how about you try to hurt my self-confidence? At this moment, Sha Chen finally stated his purpose. That's right, he came to Long just to fight with him. Oh, no, to put it more politely, it should be called verifying one's own strength. He is very curious about what level of strength he can reach after turning on the demonic state, because this will determine how arrogant he is as a person. The first requirement for someone who can activate his demonic state and fight with all his strength is to be very strong. The second is that people are willing to fight him and show mercy to him. Otherwise, if he breaks into the Marine headquarters now, there will definitely be many people willing to fight him, but if nothing happens, he will most likely go to Impel Down to recuperate after the fight. And obviously, the dragon meets all the above conditions. I can't say it in terms of strength, but it must be very strong. In addition, according to Sha Chen's rounding, Da Falong is his uncle. The uncle must be merciful to his nephew, right? When his thoughts came to this, Sha Chen felt a little dazed for a moment. Why did he feel that he liked to recognize his uncle recently? Chen has been wandering for half his life, but he only regrets that he has never met his master. If he doesn't give up, Chen is willing to worship him as his adoptive father. No, no, no. Sha Chen shook his head vigorously. He is recognizing his uncle, not his adoptive father, so he is colluding with him. Long looked at Sha Chen steadily, and after a long time he said, since you have this idea, then I will play with you. Then let's go and find a deserted place on the island. After saying that, Sha Chen disappeared instantly. Seeing this scene, Long shook his head lightly. Young man, you are still too impatient. You don't even wait for me, an elder. After saying that, his figure disappeared instantly. Above a forest outside Rog Town, a line of white smoke was galloping in a certain direction at an extremely fast speed. The expression on Smoker's face was very solemn. Just half an hour ago, he was searching for traces of the Straw Hats in Rog Town. Suddenly, a huge wave of fighting was felt coming from outside the town. Immediately, he rushed to the source of the battle fluctuations without any hesitation. It was already close to the edge of the island, some distance away from Rog Town, so even after half an hour's journey, he still hadn't arrived yet. Moreover, the fluctuations of the fighting had stopped a few minutes ago, and he didn't know if he would be able to see the fighting people when he arrived. And, judging from the fluctuations that just came over, he is definitely far from the opponent of the person fighting. But he came over without hesitation. Rog Town was the territory under his jurisdiction, and he wanted to ensure that no problems would arise. If you want to destroy this place, step over his corpse first. At this time, in the center of the battlefield, two people stood here quietly. Long looked at Sha Chen in front of him in surprise, and he understood why Sha Chen was so confident in him. If he had this strength at Sha Chen's age, he would be more arrogant than Sha Chen. Thinking of this, Long inexplicably wanted to recruit Sha Chen, and couldn't help but ask Sha Chen, are you interested in joining the Revolutionary Army? Join the Revolutionary Army. Sha Chen was stunned for a moment. He didn't expect that Long would have the idea of letting him join the Revolutionary Army, but he was not interested. Forget it, I still prefer to be a pirate. How wonderful it is to be free. Okay, my goal has been achieved, so I will go back first. Bye. After saying that, Sha Chen turned around and walked towards Rog Town. At this time, Smoker also rushed here and bumped into Sha Chen, who was about to leave. Hey, Master Marine, I didn't expect to meet you in such a remote place. What a fate. Sha Chen said hello to Smoker. But Smoker seemed not to hear his words at this time, but looked at the scene with horror on his face. What he saw in front of him was a piece of land that was destroyed everywhere, and the surrounding trees were all turned into sawdust. A hollow area of several miles in radius was formed in the forest. Sha Chen looked at him like this and did not bother him. Instead, he walked slowly past him. Just when he was about to use the mooncloth to rush back to Rog Town, Smoker stopped him again as before. Demon King Sha Chen. The same words came out of Smoker's mouth, but the difference from the first meeting was that his tone this time was no longer full of questions, but full of affirmation. It's me. Sha Chen did not deny his identity like before this time, but admitted it openly. He has no reason to pretend anymore. His goal has been achieved, so he is not afraid of trouble now. How dare you lie to me? I'm going to take you into Impel Down. After saying that, Smoker rushed towards Sha Chen and pulled out the 10 hands on his back. In his opinion, since the current Sha Chen looks different from the one in the reward order, it must be because of eating the devil fruit. And the weapon inlaid with the Sea Tower stone in his hand is the nemesis of those with devil fruit abilities. It's a pity that imagination is beautiful, but reality is very skinny. He misjudged one thing. The strength gap between him and Sha Chen was too huge. Sha Chen didn't even turn around, but just dodged Smoker's attack slightly. How is it possible? Smoker was shocked, with a drop of cold sweat streaming down his face. Then Sha Chen's faint voice came to his ears. Master Marine, you are brave. Do you think my 300 million bounty is just water? Or are you too confident in your Logia abilities? Bang! Smoker flew backwards at a speed many times faster than the attack, and then hit the ground heavily several hundred meters away. PFF'd. Smoker couldn't help but vomit a mouthful of blood as soon as he struggled to get up. Looking at Sha Chen, his eyes were full of solemnity. Master Marine, your strength is a bit weak, you want to catch me. It's 100,000 years too early. After that, Sha Chen continued to walk outside. Suddenly after taking a few steps, he stopped and waved towards Smoker. By the way, thank you Barry. That's too much. Smoker struggled to get up from the ground. Even if he couldn't defeat Sha Chen, he would still go to find him. But at this moment, a hand held down his body as he was about to get up. You can't beat him. Smoker slowly raised his head and looked at the man in front of him, with shock in his eyes. Just now, his attention was focused on Sha Chen, and he didn't notice the identity of the other person here at all. Dragon. When Sha Chen returned to Rog Town, he just saw a huge thunder striking from the sky. Ha ha ha, I can't die, Luffy said happily after patting his straw hat. At the same time, it began to rain heavily, accompanied by strong winds. Seeing this scene, Sha Chen said directly to Luffy. Let's go, Luffy, Marine has already taken action. If we don't leave, it will be too late. Oh, it's Sha Chen, why are you here? Luffy heard someone calling him and said happily after realizing it was Sha Chen. After hearing this, Sha Chen couldn't help but help his forehead. No wonder the Straw Hats in the original work always escape to the limit. Isn't the way you chat just to let Marine find you? Don't worry about why I'm here. Now, will you listen to me? Marine, here you go, so run away, do you understand? Oh, I understand, Luffy nodded. Then why are you still standing there? Run, Sha Chen said angrily, looking at Luffy who was still standing still. Oh, good. Luffy ran out immediately, but... Straw Hat, stop. Buggy's voice came from behind. But what Sha Chen didn't expect was that Luffy really stopped. Seeing this scene, Sha Chen couldn't bear it anymore. You like ink so much, don't you? Sha Chen looked at the direction and found that there was a long alley at this location that could lead directly to the outside of the town. Then a smile appeared on the corner of Sha Chen's mouth. Yangsha instantly appeared next to Luffy, looked at Luffy and sneered. Since you don't want to leave by yourself, then let me help you. Then after taking aim, Sha Chen kicked Luffy out. In an instant, Luffy flew towards the outside of the town at extremely fast speeds. Sha Chen, who was standing there, clapped his hands and showed a smile. Isn't this much faster? It really is. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.